Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Hopinions, and after what seems like a mammoth break,
Been ages.
well, for us anyway, we're back.
We are.
After we've had, although we've been putting shows out, we've actually had about 4 weeks off of recording.
Yeah, it's about
haven't
4
we?
weeks off since we recorded the pub episode.
Yes.
At the Vic.
Yes, which we're still getting lots of great feedback about.
Yeah,
which is
so thanks
fantastic.
for that.
Yeah, and some of the nicer feedback as well, and I think we'll probably get into it a bit later on. I think somebody said it was actually nice to just forget about the beer for once,
Yeah.
and just have a bit of a chat about.
Yeah, because
stuff.
we didn't really discuss the beers we were drinking.
No.
Really, we mentioned them. That was it.
Well, we drank the same beer
All the way through.
3 times, didn't we?
Yeah, we had the
Essentially.
East London, didn't we?
Yeah. So it's good to be back, and as you would expect after having a few weeks off, we've got a lot to get through.
There is a lot to get through.
but
Apparently, it all started as soon as we went off.
Well, it literally did. It started the next day with one of the big news announcements that we'll come on to in a while. But to help us get through it, we're really grateful to the guys from Signature Brew who have sent us over a box of goodies. So we're working our way through what are essentially 4 of their core beers on this show, and 2 of their specials as well.
They've been incredibly generous.
Yeah.
Incredibly generous.
So first up, we've got, which listeners would have heard you open and pour, we've got, is it the Studio Pilsner?
Yeah, so it's the 4% Pilsner Lager from Signature Brew. This is part of their core range, isn't it? So this is their standard 330 can with the sort of label on the front, almost handwritten in places, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like their labels on their core range look like Backstage passes.
Yes.
So I do like that little thing. It ties into their whole music thing that they've got going on as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's give this a try. Cheers.
Cheers. Bit of a florally bready
Yeah, it's
nose.
very, very floral on the nose. That was the first thing that came to mind.
Oh, it's a very floral flavour. It's quite a... It doesn't strike me as being a pill straight away.
No, it's quite...
It's got quite a soft mouthfeel as well.
First thing I got, was, the minute I took the first gulp of it, was something like really, really citrusy, really juicy fruits going on in my mouth, which you wouldn't normally expect from a Pilsner. Very sweet as well for a Pilsner.
Yeah, no, I think it's really nice. Looking forward to finishing that. That won't take too long, that one.
No, not 4%.
No, it's a nice little percentage, that one.
Yeah. Well, we better crack on then and get into what we've been up to.
What have we been up to
over
over the last 4 weeks?
Well, there's been... I know I've had a few adventures. You've had a few of your own,
Yeah.
and then there's a couple that we've done together.
Yeah.
So let's take it in turns. You go first, mate.
Okay, well, I suppose the big thing for me, and I'm sure a few listeners and people who follow on Twitter and Instagram will know that I went for a week's cruise over the Easter break with Michelle, and we stopped off at Cherbourg and we revisited a beer shop simply called Beers, and caught up with the woman who's running it. So it's gone from strength to strength over the year, so much so that she's now opening a second place south of Paris.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. She says they'd come out there, but when the opening might be at some point later in the year and be convenient to go to south of Paris on a weekday evening probably is another matter.
Yeah, not so much.
But it was really nice to spend some time in there again. I had some really nice beers, and we'd already set our minds on having the meat and the cheese platter this time, not just the cheese platter, because obviously that's just not enough, is it?
No.
And so that was really, really pleasant. And we actually popped into an Irish pub afterwards because I wanted to watch a bit of football. And they had a really good Belgian bottled beer selection in there. So I was watching football drinking Duvel.
Nice.
Yeah, 8.5%. What else would you do at 2:30 in the afternoon watching football? So that was really good. And then on the cruise itself, they had a few standout beers. So your initial idea of a cruise ship, and especially maybe for a lot of cruises, but for P&O, they are pretty good, as well as having a lot of the macro beers. You can get your Fosters. You can get some of the regional brews, so there's Marston's Pedigree. You can get also, a few things from, say, people like Harvey's, which is a little bit of a surprise. But it's not a lot of the Harveys which you'd normally see. So there's a couple of specials they do, which is based on some collaborations are done with the chef, the wine guy, Ollie Smith. And they've got a golden pale ale at 5% in bottles, but they've also got an IPA on draft. So I was able to have pints of IPA at a couple of the bars. But also the Harvey's canned range, like the rebranding.
Yeah.
And they've got a 4% lager, and they've also got a malt brown, which is a bit higher. They were really nice. The branding's lovely. It's that sort of, it's got a real feel to the labels on the can.
It's kind of like that matte finish.
Really matte finish, but it's got not just a matte, but it also feels the contours of the actual drawings as well. They were really good. And also, I hadn't tried it before, but also their best bitter in cans as well. And that was really nice. It was really well conditioned, because I'm always a bit nervous about traditional bitters ending up in cans.
Canned best bitter, yeah. It's not
one which always
not
strikes
something
me
I'd race towards.
No, but again, they were really good. So hats off to what Harvey's are doing with some of their new beers and their rebranding. But also gave me a chance to revisit a couple of beers I hadn't had. One of them being Bateman's Mocha, which, going back on my Untapped, I had once before. But as part of the Great British Beer Hunt that Sainsbury's used to do.
Just about to call that and say, I bet that, because that was one of those beers that seemed to appear in that every year.
Yeah, and rightly so, actually, because and I found the picture I had of it of where I'd bought all 20 of the beers because I couldn't decide what to have, and Bateman's was in there.
Yeah.
And it's a 6% beer, but if it was a newly released beer from an up-and-coming craft brewer, people would be talking about it a lot more than they are, because it is full of all those chocolate flavours, but superbly drinkable at 6%, and it's in a 500ml bottle.
And I think, if memory serves me correctly, it's quite full-bodied as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite thick.
Yeah, I would love to have it, see what it's like on cask, because I think you get that thickness, but it would just round it off a little bit more as well. And the other one I just want to give a quick mention to, Elgood's Cool Ship Fruit Sour. Now, I've heard a lot about All Goods and the fact that they do the open fermentation in their cool ships, but I'd never got around to trying the beer. And it's a lovely, soft, gentle, lambic-like type of beer. For people who are a bit nervous about maybe diving in on some of the very traditional lambics, say a Cantillon, for example, this would be a great way of doing it. Really refreshing. Again, it'd make a great summer beer. So that was my beery highlights from the cruise.
Quite an adventure there, really.
Yeah, and like I said, I was so pleased last year when I found a few beers. My obviously one of my favourites, Jaipur, is still on the ship. It's just that they've gone down from 500s to 330s. So a little tear when I saw that. But also the fact that they do have a bit of a selection. You just have to. It's just not as obvious as the ones which have all the tied.
Yeah.
The tied taps and stuff. So yeah, not too bad for a 7-day cruise, I think.
I'm intrigued about the sort of the craft beer shop in France, and was there much of a French offering in terms of the craftier beers?
Yeah, what we found was that the last year the French craftier beers definitely tended to be on the stronger dark side. Which I sort of put into my head as being more like maybe some of the red wines, and so to speak. A lot of local cider as well, from like the Normandy region, which is where we were in Cherbourg, and also, but this year they had a lot more hop forward beers available, which are currently being produced in France, because we had a couple of them while we were there. So yeah, I would say it's definitely a growing market, but it's all very well me and Michelle rocking up once a year. But
that's not going to sustain their business, is
exactly.
it? No.
But while we were there were plenty of locals coming in. Not so many stopping to have a drink, but doing a fairly decent takeout trade of, filling up a traditional shopping basket. And they were going for a lot of the French beers.
Okay.
I sort of paid a bit of attention while they were buying them, and wondering which ones they might pick and that kind of thing. And a few of them really were homing in on their local ones as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would appear to definitely be something that's coming on, and the fact that she feels strong enough and in a good enough position to open a second place and not that far from Paris, I think speaks volumes, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if ever you're in Cherbourg, you're looking for a shop called Beers, BEERZ.
The place to visit.
Place to visit. You can drink in, take out.
Well, it sounds like you had a great time.
Yeah, no, it was lovely.
At least. similarly to that, I went to Bishop Stortford.
Similarly, how did that as a segue, Steve? That does not work.
The worst segue ever. But no, specifically to go, and this is where the similarity comes in. Specifically to go to a place called the Bishop's Cave, which was a wine, cheese, meat, craft beer, and pie shop, which essentially ticks all of the boxes.
Ticks all of the main food groups, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. So it's this little shop in Bishop Stortford. They've also got a branch in St Albans as well. Very dominant on their wine selection, but with a cheese counter at the back, and then 3 draft craft beers, and a pretty decent fridge full of craft beer as well. So Andrew and I, we booked a table 11:30 on a Saturday morning. I don't think we could have got in there any earlier.
I would have loved to know what they thought when they took that booking.
if we'd tried. And I was very much of the intention of sampling the cheese board and going for a cheeky pork pie on the side, but I was devastated to find out that they had no pork pies on that day, so we just went for the cheese board. And it's quite nice because you get to choose any 3 of the cheeses from the selection that they've got in the deli counter. So whereas you go to a lot of places and you order the cheese board and you get what you get, this was you could actually choose the cheeses that you want. And one of the standouts was a cheese that had actually been soaked in Newcastle brown ale as well. So it had a crust that had obviously formed on it, but there was of Newcastle brown ale, and that was the strongest cheese we had, and it did have quite a bitter kick to it as well. And I'm not saying that took on a lot from the beer. That might have been the characteristics of the cheese anyway. But a good few beers in there, but the standouts for me, there were 2 beers that were American imports that they had in. Now, I'm always wary buying an American import, especially from a cheese shop in Bishop Stortford.
Fair enough.
Because when you say craft beer, Bishop Stortford, I don't think would appear in the top 200 or so places that you'd list.
Probably not.
But having a look at the dates on these 2 particular beers, they weren't too bad actually. So you could, because American beers you had to work on this is the bottled on date. I think one of them was 3 months, one of them was 4 months, which isn't too bad. And they were both incredible. One of them was from Green Flash, and it was called Remix IPA. Came in at about 6.5%, something like that. But it was proper old school West Coast style. Yeah. Properly cuttingly bitter. Absolutely beautiful. And the other one was from Belching Beaver, which was their Mosaic Double IPA, which was a beer that I spotted the minute I walked in there, and I kept going back to it. And we got round to ordering our last beers, and I was still umming and ahhing over it. And in the end, Angela just said, she was just like, you just get the beer, because it was the one that you went for when you went in, and I'm so happy I did. It was absolutely perfect as a beer, but nice little venue. We were chatting to them, and they were saying obviously most of their trade comes from groups of people coming in for sort of like birthdays and sort of the wine and cheese offering more so than the beer. But it's great to see. There's this one little place in a town I think it's actually in Hertfordshire. I'm always a bit unsure.
Bishop Stortford is definitely Essex, Hertfordshire.
It's on the border,
isn't it?
Yeah. Great to see them embracing craft beer.
Yeah.
And then while we're in Bishop Stortford, we just had a bit of I sort of said before we went, look, I'm not just going for that. And I had a look on Untapped and found a few other places. I was like, let's visit some of these.
You did a few pubs, didn't you?
Yeah, so went into one pub that was offering 20% for camera members. I think it's the first time I've actually used my camera membership card, so I proudly got my 20% off in there. I was like, I'm happy, I've got this. With the exception of the last place we went in, which was the local Spoons, all of the others were just a little bit hit and miss though. First place we went in had a pint of Ghost Ship that was the end of the barrel, and he still served it, and he put it on the bar in front of me, and he was like, oh, it's alright, that'll settle in a minute. And I was looking at it going, so that's not going to settle, mate. So in the end I took it and drunk it. It was Ghost Ship, but just a bit more astringent than what you'd normally expect from it. And then a couple of the other places, like I say, it seemed as though at least 3 other places that we went in, by looking on their websites, all advertised themselves as the music venue of Bishop Stortford, which kind of makes me wonder if they must have a big music scene if there's 3 venues advertising the live music venue in the town. But the Spoons was the last place we went to, and I'm actually glad it was, because I walked in there and straight away there were about half a dozen beers I wanted to try, because obviously they've got their new craft offering now. And one of those craft offerings on the keg taps was Green Devil by Oakham, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, well, I need a pint of that before I go. But I was actually drawn straight to the hand pumps, because they had on the latest collaboration between Six Point and Adnams, which was a beer called Low Res.
Any good?
It was really nice, actually. I don't know whether it... I mean, the label, the name of it, very much in the same sort of style as the cans of resin, and I'm just wondering whether they've literally done kind of a session version. Session resin. Yeah. But no, it was really nice. Really, really drinkable. But I've got to admit to drinking it really quickly because I wanted to get to the Green Devil.
So you weren't exactly savouring it there?
Wasn't exactly savouring it, no. But I enjoyed it. And as a place, I mean, we visited the Bishop's Cave, and then I think we did 4 pubs. Yeah, standard sort of little town
with a couple of. So the bookends were good.
Yes, yeah,
the bookends were good.
Everywhere in between was a bit. Nah. Yeah.
Okay, well, you can't have everything, and at least you've given it a try. At least you know if you do find yourself in Bishop Stortford for whatever reason it is, there are a minimum of 2 options.
Yeah, and it was interesting because obviously throughout the day I was posting. I did one of these things like I did when I went to Whittam, where I was taking a picture of the place, put it on Instagram with some thoughts about it and some thoughts about the beer. Now, obviously, when I do that with our Instagram, it also goes to Facebook and Twitter. So I was picking up quite a lot of comments throughout the day, and a lot of people seem to be saying that a lot of people choose Bishop Stortford as a place to stay if they're flying out of Stansted rather than actually staying at Stansted, because it's not that far away.
No, it'd be a bit cheaper.
And people saying, "Oh, I never knew these places existed." So at least if you do find yourself flying out of Stansted and staying in Bishop Stortford,
there are a few options.
There are a couple of options. Yeah.
There you go, a public service from the one and only Steve of Beer O'Clock Show.
Absolutely, I do these things for our listeners. What else you been up to then, mate?
So the only real major thing I did was a few days before. It was probably a week before the cruise. Michelle and myself went to one of the local breweries, the Billericay Brewery, and they had their spring beer festival the weekend before Easter. Bit like everywhere else, the weather wasn't great the day we went, but we were able to be inside, so it wasn't too bad. A good selection of local beers. They had a few from a relatively new one called Leon C. Something from Keppels, who again are local to us in Essex, so sorry listeners, these names may not be familiar to a lot of you. But what I did like that Billericay were doing their best to help them out as well with the beers. And so we had some really nice beers there, and what I always do like is that, again, I know the people at Billericay, we know Trevor there as well. It's a tap room which has got a really nice feel to it. If I lived in Billericay, that would probably be my local, because it's got that really comfortable feeling, the tap room of being a pub.
Yeah.
And they've got a really good bottled range again of the local Essex beer scene, but they've also got a keg. They've got a couple of keg lines now, so they have gone a bit on the crafty side, and they have a fairly decent range of a lot of the popular London craft beers as well. And and a few Belgian beers, and that's sort of what they've got in there. But it's just a lovely space, and it's 10 minutes up from the station. Yes, it's a bit of an uphill, but it's worth getting there. So yeah, that's my beer adventure for pre-Easter.
Well, again, staying on that local theme, we did have our regular bottle share, which you missed because you were sunning yourself on the decks of a boat in the Mediterranean.
Less sunning this time.
Which was actually a really small gathering this time. I think because it was Easter, because we do have this kind of, it's not a rule, but we are very strict in adhering to.
No, it's a rule. It's a rule.
It's always the first Tuesday
because let's face it,
of the month.
The 2nd of January.
Yeah,
we still had it.
Yeah, and I think we kind of maintain that rule because, and a few people have said to us in the past, "Oh, can you move this one? Can you move that one?" If we start moving it for one person, you end up moving it for everyone, and then so we've always said it's the first Tuesday of the month regardless. So A small group of 8 people. Some interesting beers were shared. Some others not so, as is always the case with these things.
That's what it's about, though, isn't it?
But it's still just a great little group that we've got there. I think we've topped something like 420 unique beers now.
That's pretty good going.
That we keep on sort of a spreadsheet that we have. That's not including a number of home brews that have been bought as well. So
and bottle share extras when we made like the odd birthday gathering and stuff like that.
If you were to factor all that into it, it's probably more 450 that we've done now. Unique beers over a period of time. But there's just one standout beer that just really wanted to mention, which was a beer called No Country by Garage Beer Co. Which I think Matt bought along, which was this big, thick chocolate stout, and it was almost beautiful. We had that last, and it was lovely to finish the evening on such a tasty beer, actually, to finish it on.
I'm not familiar with that brewery or their beers, really.
Yeah, I'm sure they're from Spain. Actually, Garage Beer Co. But it was
actually, that rings a bell. Well, and that would make a bit of sense because Matt's been to the Barcelona Beer Festival before, hasn't he? Yeah,
but it was great beer. That and that the Ale House also had on tap Hamilton's N7, which is always a cracking.
That's a cracking beer
to go to, and they had it on keg as well. So I think I had one before. I had 2 pints during the bottle share and then a pint after as well. So
Steve drinking pints during the bottle share.
Yeah, because the even though we were getting decent pours, it just wasn't enough. We finished the first beer.
Yeah, what did you think? I mean, I finished mine and it just went down a treat.
It went down a treat. Only at the very end was I getting anything that would make you think it was a Pilsner.
I'd agree with that.
I was getting a lot of lemon from it throughout.
Well, it does say, and again, thanks to Signature Brew for sending us the little booklet, but it says our go-to lagers played its part in many a late night session, both in the recording studio and at the bar. The highest quality European noble hops are amplified by the simple clarity of water, yeast and malt, resulting in unmistakable floral hits and a pleasingly bitter finish. All the hallmarks of an instant classic. I think it's got all of that, apart from the fact, a bit like you, I would have picked it out in a blind tasting as a Pilsner.
No.
But I did enjoy it.
I did, and I know that one of Signature Brew's ethos is that they want good beer in music venues.
And all for that.
Yeah. I'd be more than happy to try have one of those passed to me over a bar in a dingy music venue in London than a can of Red Stripe. That goes without saying.
I'm with you on that one because I just haven't been to. I can't recall a time I've been to a music venue and been excited about the beer. Fortunately, I've always been excited about the music I've been going to see.
Yeah. So the beer's almost secondary, isn't it?
But if you could couple the both.
Yep.
And also 4% Pilsner.
Yeah.
Be quite
drinkable, isn't it? Yeah.
Drinkable.
Yeah.
So what have you opened for the second offering then?
Okay, so this is Roadie, and this is a 4.3% all-night IPA. So I'm guessing this is their session
IPA, isn't it?
It's got some nose on it.
It's got a lovely nose on it. Ooh.
Oh wow, that's stunning.
That's delicious.
That's really smooth.
Yeah.
Now we had this on one of our visits to the Vic.
Yeah.
Maybe one of our planning meetings that we had there. And I've got to say, that's not too dissimilar from the cask version that we tried.
Yeah, no, that's tasting really nice. I'm really enjoying that. Very soft, full mouthfeel to it.
Yeah, soft. It's again, the malts are playing their part in it. Lots of fruit flavours going on in there though, as well, really coming through. Nice bitterness on the finish, really well balanced from beginning to end.
Yeah, again, a bit like the Pilsner. I'm not sure how long this will last in the glass, so we should probably crack on.
We should probably crack on. So we've got a couple of
joint events.
Yes, that we went to. 'Cause we do stuff together occasionally.
Yeah. Other than this,
yes.
We went to what was classed as the Spirit of Sharing at the Irish Embassy, which, apart from anything else, the chance to go into an embassy building is one not to turn down.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And it was a beautiful building, staircase and the 2 or 3 rooms that they used for it as well. Really nice. Wayne from the Irish Beer Snobs was over for it. Special guest appearance in London for one day only, effectively.
Yes.
Did
he make the most of that?
Yes. Well, to be fair, we did as well.
Yeah. Well, he would have made most of it unless I think he was stuck on the tarmac at Dublin Airport for 3 hours.
He spent more time in Dublin on the day than he meant to than he did in London. He would have done a few places in London more, but the spirit of sharing is about what they're trying to showcase is that the Irish drinks that we may not be aware of in the UK. And predominantly, it was the spirit side of things, wasn't it? It was the whiskey and the gin. They had a few of the beers there,
and those cream liqueurs that they do so well as well.
But I mean, I am a whiskey and gin fan anyway, so I was quite excited by a few of them. They were all really friendly, had some really nice tasters. But I have to admit, a couple of the gins blew me away. They were really, really nice, really gentle, really tasty, very drinkable as well, with or without the tonics.
I think it's probably some of the spirit of sharing, the spirits
of sharing
that actually led to my downfall later on that evening.
Yes. So apologies to the couple of people we met up with in the Pelt Trader later on.
Yes,
if we made no sense at all.
While we were insisting on drinking pints of Colonel. That's the only thing I remember. I couldn't tell you which beer it was. I know we were drinking pints of Colonel
because we needed pints of Colonel then
at that point of the evening. No, that was a great evening. And before I've got to just say as well, I did find I was there a little bit early, and I managed to find thanks to your recommendation, because I think originally, if we could have done it, we were planning on meeting up beforehand.
Yeah.
So you recommended there was a Fuller's bar close by that I found my way to, and I had the most beautiful pint of ESB, cask ESB, that they serve in their big pint tankards that they do.
Oh, the actual ESB pint tankards.
It was beautiful.
I wouldn't have minded that. The pub looked nice as well, actually.
It was a lovely little pub. Yeah, it was for the time of day, it was quite busy. But it wasn't too busy, it wasn't too loud. Everyone was just having quiet conversations.
Because it's quite hard to find pub in that bit of London.
Yeah,
you're not far from a few of the other embassies. You're not far from Victoria.
There.
You're not getting that far away from Buckingham Palace and the parks. It's quite hard to find a pub.
Yeah.
So when I saw that one, I thought, but I just couldn't get away from the office. Day job.
Well, I didn't think I'd be there in time, but I managed to get in. Literally, I think I managed to find myself an extra 15 minutes, which was time enough to get to that pub and have a pint before I went in. So that was cracking. And while we're talking about cask beer, another perfect segue.
That was a good segue.
It was, wasn't it? If only we stopped highlighting when the segues were so good. We both went to the Cask 2018 festival at the weekend that was being hosted. I think it was hosted by Affinity, but it was also in their brewery, and they was using Partisan's space.
Where Partisan are now, where Affinity are now, used to be.
Yeah.
So a bit of a symbiotic relationship, obviously. For us, it gave us a chance to go to Partisan, because I hadn't been to their new town.
No, I hadn't.
Nice space.
Beautiful space.
Plenty of space outside. If we get some summer. Not feeling like summer's ever going to come at the moment. What's your Game of Thrones? Winter is coming. Winter is staying at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's not going anywhere, is it?
So it was quite nice to get down there. So what they did was they had a programme which had advertised the beers for Saturday and Sunday, and the beers that were in both venues. Like a lot of these things, a few of the beers had got switched out from the time they did the print of the programme. I
think each brewery had been asked to send 2 beers, hadn't they? And was it they had been asked to send 1 light and 1 dark?
They didn't want the same type of beers from both of them. Now, there was a few beers which stood out when we went down. When we had said, "Well, we definitely want to have those." I think what I want to say first was that it's year one. I think it was really good that a couple of what would be classed as craft breweries in one of the hipster areas decided to showcase cask. Was it in the end much different to some of the cask experiences I've had at Camera Beer festivals? Probably not. What I would say is that the dark beers probably still were the better beers to aim for.
Dark beers absolutely shone through on the weekend.
I will counter that by saying, but I was still very excited to try the Northern Monk New World IPA on cask.
Yeah, and we put a lot of scientific research into that as well.
Because, we don't just do these things lightly.
No. Again, we take hits for the listeners.
Yes. And even our creative director Clayton took a hit as well for the listeners. So the three of us had a train beer. So we each had a can of the New World IPA. And then the first beer we had when we got to the Partisan tap room, who were the ones who had the New World IPA on cask, was straight into the New World IPA.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I did enjoy it. It was just a bit more rounded, a bit softer, very easy to drink. But it definitely lacked that sharpness and bite of the New World IPA in the can or on the draft.
I think that's the thing with some of these, and we'll call them New World IPAs, is that if you do get to try the cask version of it, they are a very different beer.
Yeah.
The only other one that I can make comparison to is having had Backstage on cask as well as on keg and bottle. That the cask version of it is a completely different beast. It's you can taste it's the same beer, but it's a beer where on cask it's all about the malt. That's what shines through in it. The hops are there, but they're not playing the leading role. Whereas when you have a bottle or Backstage on keg, you get sharp,
it's
bitter
hot
hops.
straight away, isn't it?
You get the bitterness, but it just comes from a different direction. And I think that was the same with the New World, and obviously from the point of view as well that it was all gravity pour. So I won't use the word flat, but it maybe, had it been served through a hand pump, it maybe would have had a bit more to it.
The dark beer shone.
Yes, yeah.
And so on that note, what was your couple of standouts? For, I think we agreed on these anyway.
Well, New World IPA was obviously one that stood out. The other ones before I go to the darks, where there was a beer by Affinity themselves, which was called April, and it was a Citra bitter, which was really interesting actually in terms of what it actually was and what it tasted like, because that's you'd not normally associate using a Citra hop as a shining hop in a bitter, and it just worked for me. I know you wasn't.
Yeah, it was less interesting for me. I found that it didn't work. I didn't think that effectively a Citra hopped best bitter married together very well. But I thought it was interesting, and I was really looking forward to trying it. But it left me a bit nonplussed in the end.
I think that was also getting towards the end of our time there.
Yes,
and I was getting to the point where I was getting a bit fed up with just having the same style of beers.
Yeah. Plus, fact we've got to that stage where Affinity is a much smaller operation. There was a bit of a constant queuing going on as well, wasn't there?
We were literally ordering a drink, going to the back of the queue, drinking, ordering a drink, and that
so it became a bit less relaxed, didn't it? But that was our choice to do it that way, because we wanted to try and feel
absolutely. But the two dark ones that shone, and this will probably come as no surprise to anyone. The first one was Wild Beer Co's Millionaire, and
that was, I think, my first wild beer cask.
Yeah, same. It's the first time I've had that beer on cask,
and it was delicious.
It was delicious. The salty side
salty
of it really came through more than in the other ones. And the other one, and this will be quite interesting because it's a beer that we're going to be drinking later on in this show, was Signature Brew's Anthology as well.
Well, I don't want to say too much about it now. Actually,
we'll come back to that.
I think we'll talk about the cask when we have the can.
We drink it. Yeah. But no, like so, I mean, it's an interesting first attempt. It does make you question when you looked at the breweries that were involved and the beers that they were bringing. I'm surprised the event didn't sell out, and you have to question if that had been kind of a craft keg festival with those beers, with those breweries bringing those beers. I think that would have sold out.
It was great value. It was £5. For that, you got your glass.
I'm not knocking it.
You got your glass and you got your first half pint. So it was a no-brainer. I mean, basically that just meant they could control the numbers by selling the tickets, which they would have to do because they've got quite, relatively small spaces compared to traditional beer festivals. I think there's a few things I'm sure they'll bring it back. I think because they've already rebranded to Cask 2019 on Twitter.
They said they're doing it again.
And I'm sure there'll be a few things they'll tweak as well. So I would like to see them do it. I'm just not sure what exactly they're aiming for, because obviously their big thing was about really showcasing cask. I think what it might have done was people who do keg normally may well have tried cask. There could be some people who have tried cask for the first time.
Maybe, yeah.
Whereas we've done it the other way around because that was what was available to us. Mm-hmm. Now you can get plenty of good quality keg on tap. So maybe this is for some people their first time having cask, and probably maybe their first time having cask and gravity for certain.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think I'm pleased they did it. I think it was good value, and I would look forward to seeing what they do in future years.
Yeah, well, it's like I say, for what you paid for it, it was a good value day out.
Yeah, and we got to meet loads of people.
Yes, shout out to everyone that we met. I can't remember half of them.
No, it took me. I think it took me 3 tweets because I did it, and then oh yeah, and
yeah.
it was like, and another thing.
But it was great that people were just coming up and chatting to us,
yeah.
as well. So it was fun to meet everyone.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're almost at the end of beer number 2 of this evening's selection.
And Beer Adventures. Is that the show done?
No. That's probably part 1 of 3. You could probably say
a trilogy all in one night.
Yes, absolutely.
I think this is fantastic. Actually, do you know what? On draft cold in a hot music venue, this would be fantastic, wouldn't it? It would be really, really tasty. I'd really look forward to having this. And again, you know, it's only 4.3%, so it is sessionable, properly sessionable, other than maybe not using the word sessionable quite so wisely every now and again. I mean, this is it's Citra formats, keg, cask, can.
Yeah, it works.
It works again. It's potentially another one of those beers that crosses the various divides on the formats as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, should we dig into some news then? Because
oh God, no!
There is a lot of news as we're kind of limbering up for
Steve's warming up for the news.
For those listeners that can see nothing. Okay, so first up, and this is news that came out today as we record on Twitter. A few weeks back, we mentioned about Stone Brewing Co. basically having a bit of a pop. Miller Coors over the Keystone beer. Yeah. Well, today it came out that apparently Miller Coors have now put in a counterclaim against Stone. That essentially, over the course of about 12 tweets, someone broke down the entire 86-page legal document.
It was the longest thread.
Yeah.
And that's with the 240 characters. You get 280 characters now.
In a nutshell, basically what Miller Coors are saying is that they used the word Stone in relation to beer first.
Yeah, and the guy who, again, as well as doing the tweets, actually had links to either the pictures that Miller Coors had posted as part of their 86-page document, or links to other bits they talked about. And yes, it would appear that in the past, prior to 1996, which I think is when Stone came into being, they had used the word Stone as an abbreviation, so the little apostrophe in the word Stone as an abbreviation for certain things. I guess in a nutshell, what it shows is that, I think we mentioned it when we were recording with the guys from Men Behaving Badly. And I think we all said, yep, go for it. But, at the back of that, you can only go for it if you're on firm foundations.
And it seems like they haven't done their research.
And maybe, they haven't done their research, but ultimately, Miller Coors are going to also have deeper pockets.
Yeah.
So it's taken, 6 weeks to 2 months for this to come out. They've got someone or someones, whether that be lawyers or researchers, and then lawyers saying, "Yep, this holds, this stands up," and then they've released it. Now, where this goes from here, who knows? Because the ultimate end goal, if Molson Coors really, really want to push it, would be that saying, "Well, look, we did use it first. We can prove we used it first, and we will take you through every course in the land."
Yep. You
could end up with a situation where Stone can't be called Stone.
Well, yeah, and that's the sudden realisation I had this afternoon, was because I was tweeting about it, and I literally then had this realisation that actually if Stone lose this and it's found that word in beer is trademarkable, and actually Miller Coors have got the claims to that trademark, Stone are going to have to completely rebrand.
Everything apart from the gargle.
Everything from the name of their brewery to their flagship beer is going to have to change.
Yeah.
So this is potentially what we said at the time might have been a bit of a media stunt that could have backfired very, very badly.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it hasn't. And maybe this is just Molson Coors' way of saying, well, look, don't try something you shouldn't.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, because we are bigger and we have got the money, we have got the resources. And if you poke us with the stick enough times, we're going to poke back.
So is that your gut feel that it's a bit of muscle flexing that's going on at the moment?
Yeah, because I think what they'll do, because if they really wanted if Molson Coors want good publicity, and let's face it, no company ever wants bad publicity. If they feel they've made their point, they could then go, however, we recognise that there are probably very few people out there in the general public who will truly mistake Keystone for Stone.
Or who have ever drunk both.
Or have ever been caught drinking both at the same time. The one may have drunk Keystone 20 years ago and developed a taste for Stone further down the line. You may have to get Stone making some sort of comment, you know.
Some sort of public apology.
It was a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
We took it too far. We didn't mean this, whatever it might be. Or they could go the whole hog and go, actually, do you know what? We're going to protect our name.
Yeah.
Hopefully it wouldn't. It'd be a shame because, you know, looking at it properly, there are probably very few people who would mistake both.
Yeah, I think we said at the time, didn't we?
Budweiser and Budvar managed to coexist for the last 100 years, and they've had numerous litigation cases throughout various countries, in various regions, in various continents over the years, and they've managed to coexist. And their names are genuinely very, very close, and are essentially the same name at times.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, in one country you can call one Bud, the other one you need to call it Czechvar or Czech Bud, and whatever it might be, whatever the connotation is. So hopefully they get to a place where that doesn't happen, but I reckon it may just be a little warning to those craft brewers who think they're getting big enough to take on the truly big boys.
Well, I do wonder whether it will act as a little bit of a deterrent for those craft breweries that do like to play little media stunts every now and again for the sake of publicity.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about Brewdog,
brilliant.
There were a few items of Brewdog news that have come
up. Which always happens when we don't record.
This was literally, the first one was the day after we wrapped the pub episode, was that Brewdog have announced that they've essentially bought they've
100% bought out the draft
13,
house.
14, 15 draft house sites that there are.
Is it 13? It's either 13 in total or 13 in London plus the one in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
The draft house, you know, has been going for 7 years or so. They've bought it out lock, stock and barrel.
Yes. I think the key points to note from this one is that obviously a lot of people have said, this now takes the number of their bars in London, because this is only really going to affect people that live or visit London and those in Milton Keynes, because that's the only place where draft houses are.
Which works for me.
It works for you perfectly. I think a lot of people have said, it's going to now take the number of Brewdog's owned facilities in London to about 23, 24, something like that.
But no one says that about, I could name 23 footers in the city.
Yeah.
In the square mile.
And there have been comments that some of them are very close to existing Brewdog bars as well. I think the initial news was quite sketchy. Obviously, over the course of that week, more news come out, and it's now the key points that I think that we need to talk about are: one, they've made a commitment to keeping the draft cask lines in the draft houses that exist,
which is especially relevant because we discussed on a previous news item that Siren had agreed a contract with Draft House for a minimum of one of their beers would be available in all draft houses for the next 2 years. So,
assuming they will keep that.
Assuming that Siren still wants to be part of that transaction, but, again, that protects that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. I did actually say as well, I think it was maybe the day that it happened, that I I would still put money on us seeing Brewdog cask beer appearing at some point in the draft houses, because it gives them an outlet.
It gives them a reason
for them
to do
to
it,
produce it now,
and they've got the space to do it in their plant up in Aberdeen. So it'd be interesting to see if that did happen. But another thing we mentioned at the time was, would a few of the macro owned beers still be available in the draft house?
Well, they said no. They said they're going to be removing the macro lines apart from in one of the venues that is that's tied into an agreement for another 2 years. So they've said they are going to remove the macro lines, which is obviously interesting because one of those macro lines, again, we've commented on this, is Camden Hells.
Yeah.
And Brewdog did make quite a public song and dance about removing Camden Hells from all Brewdog bars when Camden sold.
I don't think they had a choice, to be honest. Although they've said that draft house is effectively going to be run fairly separately, they couldn't. I don't think they could, with their ethos they have in their bars and the very public ethos they've had in their bars. Even when they did the collab with Ballast Point, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that just didn't appear in the end in the bars. Anyway, you had to go elsewhere to get it.
They redacted their name on the labels, didn't they? Put a black line through.
Exactly.
It.
Yeah. But the I think that had to happen. But going back to the number of bars, I think again, for the general public, apart from the fact that in the draft house you'll start to see a couple of Brewdog offerings, because I think they've said there'll only be a couple, then I don't think you'll notice much of a difference. No,
well, they've said, again, that's something they said, there's going to be no more than 2 to 3 Brewdog lines in the bars. And probably the most important thing is as well, they've said that they're going to bring all of the staff wages up to living wage as well in the draft house.
But they've also said about doing the training, so presumably they'll offer the Cicerone training for the people who work in the draft house as well. I was surprised by it, I'll be honest. I didn't see...
didn't see it coming.
Didn't see that as being a thing, because I felt that draft house was quite small, relatively speaking. Still, draft house I think has done quite well with the model it has had in London. Perhaps Charlie, who runs it, got to the point where he thought there wasn't that much further he could go with it if he wanted to stick to, like I said, the outlier in Milton Keynes. But generally, if he wanted to stick with the London base, he can do much else with it.
Yeah.
And if Brewdog came in and offered him a good price, he's built it up from nothing. Why not?
Yeah, I think only time will tell with that. So that was the first investment that Brewdog made. Yeah. The next one that they've made is they've invested in Hawke's Cider as well, which is, I believe, it's a London-based kind of craft cidery. Is that what you call them? Are they
I think cideries,
yeah. So they're saying that basically they have tried in the past to create cider themselves, but they didn't have the expertise within their team. They've got a commitment to wanting to provide other drinks other than just beer, so they looked at how they could support that category of the drink scene. So they've announced that they've invested in Hawke's Cider.
Have they invested or bought? Well, I didn't quite catch it.
Well, I've written here invested in inverted commas. So I think that I've probably taken that straight from the AGM information that I've seen.
I mean, that's quite acquisitive in a very short space of time.
Yeah. Well, there is a part of it that, and I just want to say, this isn't me doing my normal Brewdog bashing. This really isn't. But they're essentially becoming everything that they set out not to be. So they're buying other drinks producers. They're making investments into bar chains. They're growing their bar offering. Their beers are available in every supermarket now. They've now got this deal with Spoons. That they seem to have become everything that they hated at the beginning.
Was that ever their ethos though? Wasn't their ethos about bringing good beer to the masses?
It was, yeah, and you can't knock them for that because they are trying to do that.
I would say that they're trying and in large part succeeding in doing that.
Yeah.
And I suppose they would argue that their business practices are not the same as the traditional big boys.
Yeah, so you could argue that, yeah.
With the living wage and all that kind of stuff and the Cicerone training, they're not just saying, okay, well, you have to work yourselves to the bone and, we're not really going to reward you for it. There are certain aspects which are good. They are bringing good beer to the masses. And I know a lot of people through work and the beer tasting that Brewdog is still, for a lot of them, as craft as they want to go. But if they go there, they know they can have other drinks as well now. So I think it's an interesting one. It'd be interesting how it develops over the next 6 months to a year, and whether Brewdog do any more spending as well.
Yes, yeah, whether they throw a bit more money around.
Yeah.
And the last bit of Brewdog news is, and I know this is something that both you and I have signed up to.
Yeah.
Is their new fanzine offering?
I quite like the name of it.
Yeah,
Fanzine. I quite like that. That grabbed me.
Yeah, me too. Which is essentially for £11 every 2 weeks.
Yep.
You get 3 beers delivered to your door.
Yeah, 3 cans
from their experimental pilot range.
Yeah.
And it seems to be, certainly the first 6 beers that they've got up on their website seem to be quite distinctive in terms of what they're offering. But some of them within those 6 beers seem to be an ever-evolving series. So they're going to be trying different hop combinations. And I saw it and I thought, you know what? That's a really great little idea.
Yeah, I thought it was, I liked the name of it. I liked the idea. The price point wasn't too outrageous. If after 3 months or so I feel like, these are all getting a bit samey or they're not really doing much for me, I can cancel it.
Yeah.
They deliver it to my door. I don't really have to think about it. Every 2 weeks. Totally 6 beers per month. I'll get through 6 cans per month. That's not really going to be a problem. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what they do.
I think so.
Because I've never really, as I said before, I've never invested in Brewdog. But I will champion their beers appearing in other places because they are good beers, to my mind. I know some people will disagree and some people will say, punk isn't what it was and that kind of stuff. But I think, I said, for a lot of people, it's as crafty as they want to go. It's Brewdog.
Absolutely, and that's great as well.
Yeah,
that's absolutely great.
So it does mean that if I do want to go out with friends in the city and I suggest Brewdog, and the Brewdog Brew Pub, 10 minutes from work, it's rumoured to be opening either this month or May. If people from work will want to go, I won't have to persuade them, and they'll go, oh well, can we get so and so? The name Brewdog will probably be enough.
Yeah, and they've just announced actually that they're doing a similar one in Manchester as well. They're going to be opening a brew pub in Manchester.
Oh, I missed that.
Well. So a second site in Manchester.
Ooh.
As well. So again, constant expansion from Brewdog.
If only that was a segue into anything else.
It's a segue into beer because
this beer's been sitting here looking at us.
We have been talking. So this is the Backstage IPA.
This is their step up from their session, isn't it?
It's darker in colour.
It's definitely darker in colour, and it's not quite clear.
It's got a haze.
Yeah.
To it, hasn't it?
It's got a bit of a maltier backbone for me.
Very malty. There's a lot of earthiness going on there.
Yeah.
That's a very traditional English IPA.
Yeah.
What's going on there? I think.
Yeah, be interested to see how that develops.
Quite a stark difference to the session IPA.
The session IPA feels that much more modern, hop forward to this.
Yeah, very much so.
So I don't know which one came first. I've got no real point of reference. I don't know enough about Signature Brew.
No, I don't. I think they might have been developed at about the same time.
Because this one feels like it would have come first.
It's been around a lot longer, yeah.
Yeah, just because it has got that more traditional malty backbone, the earthiness, whereas the hop forward seems to come from the beer, which is a bit less in the percentage. So we'll see how that develops in the glass.
Indeed. Right, let's dive back into the news then, because there is still a lot more to get through. So a couple of quick points that have come out from Cider. Firstly, they awarded John Keeling a Lifetime Achievement Award at their recent Beer X event in Liverpool.
What's he done?
Oh, I don't know, he brewed a few beers, didn't he?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what he's done. He chatted a bit about it.
Yeah. So this apparently it's quite a prestigious award because it's not presented every year and only goes to those deemed truly worthy. I'd like to see the criteria for
truly worthy.
How you're truly worthy.
I suppose it's always quite good to get a lifetime achievement while you're still alive, though.
Absolutely,
rather than a posthumous.
Great shout. Yeah. So just congratulations to John Keeling
very
on that one.
Seriously speaking, very well deserved.
Yeah. Also from Cider at the same event, Signature Brew, who obviously we're drinking their beers tonight. They were named Cider Brewery Business of the Year 2018. So this is around things like, not just around the beers, but it's things like their marketing implementation and how they run their business and things that make them stand out from the crowd. So again, congratulations to Signature Brew for that. So we've got some more news. This heading back to London for these next couple of bits. So we've got London Beer City announced that it's not returning this year. So after 4 years, now I would never have said that it'd been running for 4 years.
I would have guessed at 3. Maybe the first year, like a lot of these things, is quite small, but I would have said 3 years. But it's a bit of a shame.
It is. So for those people that don't know, beer writer Will Hawkes is behind. He's the driving force behind London Beer City. I think we spoke to Will on a pod blast that we did last year, and
that was enough to put him off.
That was enough to put him off. Yeah, he said he just simply hasn't got time to do it justice anymore. So quite a shame. It's
a shame because it was a good way of pulling together. Because unlike a lot of the major cities who have their beer weeks, London is so vast that to pull something under one umbrella was quite a task.
Yes. And
I thought the last couple of years there was definitely quite a lot of different events going on, which ticks a lot of boxes for people. But if you haven't got enough time, you ain't got enough time, and you have to try and fit things in, don't you?
Yeah. Staying in London, probably the fairly big news of recent times is that the Cloudwater announced that they're going to open a London tap room.
See, that was my segue. Why didn't you say that when I said it?
Because I was too focused
on
wanted
the beer.
Back to the beer, yeah. And they've since announced that they've basically got a space in Bermondsey, which sits between the Moor tap room and Brew by Numbers.
Yeah, and if they can get rid of their Twitter handle Burmo Juice, I'll be ever so grateful.
Yes, it's. I'm not sure whether they're just trolling people with that or whether that's definitely what it's going to be called. As always with these sorts of things, Twitter was divided over a number of things. Firstly, over it's not a tap room, it's a bar, which seemed to be the biggest.
That's a bigger discussion for another day. There's way too much news for that one.
Yep. And then a lot of people saying about the location as well, and are they going to take business from the already established breweries, etc. But again, I think it's one that only time will tell.
Yeah.
With.
I mean, from a purely selfish point of view, I look forward to being able to get the chance to have some fresh cloud water when I'm in London.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think they have also said that they're committed to getting the beers from Manchester to London and on tap within 24 hours of them being released.
Yeah.
As well. So it's pretty much going to be brewery.
Let's face it, they're not Northern Monk have already committed to doing a brew pub down in London in the next 2 years. You've already got more who've moved in. London is a very large place. I mean, as a business, it's almost silly to completely ignore it. But I'm sure the Cloudwater aren't planning to turn their back on their Manchester roots. That's where they are born and bred.
I think a lot of people have said, their lease is up and they could move, and I don't.
That makes no sense at all. I mean, London's far more expensive to be setting up. And if you're a brewery, I mean, how the breweries get so much beer out of such small spaces where they are sometimes, in those arches in Bermondsey, and then trucked out around those roads. Why would you move from where your lease is in an industrial estate in Manchester, where it's a lot easier, better access to a lot of other bits of the country?
It makes no sense.
They're not. I don't think they're going to do that.
No, I think we'll see them staying in Manchester. Talking of Manchester,
we're good at this.
I'm really good at this week. So we had the first news coming out about this year's Manchester Beer Week. Which will run between the 29th of June and the 8th of July. That basically they're setting up.
That's a long week, isn't it?
It's 10 days. They're setting up a competition which aims to settle the debate over England's best brewing city. Now that headline in itself has upset a few people, largely because Newcastle aren't included. And I think I
think I saw a tweet from Miles.
Yeah. So there will be teams from Bristol, Leeds, London and Liverpool, as well as 2 teams from the host city of Manchester, that will create one-off collaboration beers that will be put to a public vote on the opening weekend of the festival. All of the beers will be launched at the Pilcrow Summer Beer thing. which will run over that first weekend. So essentially, quick rundown on the teams. First Manchester team is Cloudwater, Track, Runaway and Wander Beyond. And the second team is JW Lees alongside Marble, Beatniks Republic and Panoma Island. So a few new names in there.
Yeah, a couple of new
but
names.
I only know because I know that Beernomicon have done interviews with two of those, at least. The Bristol team includes Lost and Grounded, Left-Handed Giant and more. Leeds includes Northern Monk, Kirkstall and Zapato. Liverpool, Mad Hatter, Chapter, Neptune and Top Rope. And the team from London is 4 Pure, Beavertown, Brew by Numbers and Orbit. So, be interesting to see whether any of those collaborations actually make it out into any sort of small package format for people to try around.
Maybe a special case.
Yeah, that would be ideal, wouldn't it?
It would be. Then we can all vote.
Yes. While we're talking of special cases of beer from the north, there was also the announcement of the Independent Northern Craft Brewers uniting to celebrate the Great Exhibition of the North. So this is a new series of beers called the Northern Powerhouse Brew Series. Basically, there are going to be one-off beers that are brewed by Buxton, Cloudwater, Black Lodge from Liverpool, Northern Monk, Magic Rock, Hawkshead, Thornbridge and Box Social. Will all brew in collaboration with Wylam at their home brewery. And will release a case of 8 different beers in 440ml cans, each that have got a design that has elements of each town and cities and their coats of arms incorporated within the design. Now, pictures are available of these beers online and they do look stunning.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is going to be this year's must-have collaboration series. There are only going to be 6,600 of those cases produced that will contain all 8 of the beers.
That won't take long to go.
And they will go on sale on the 22nd of June.
That won't take long to go.
That won't. I'd love to get hold of a set of those to give them a try because there are some real big names in there.
22nd of June. What's that ring a bell? It's during the World Cup, isn't it?
You'd know better than me.
Oh yeah, sorry, I've got us talking there for a moment.
Yes, absolutely. So, still cracking on with the news. Some quick announcements about some things winding up actually. So, Emmanuel's, who we featured a while back and were great hosts for us when we visited Sheffield on the Crimbo Crawl.
They were the opening venue of the Crimbo Crawl.
Nick has sadly announced that he's winding up the Emmanuel's brand, putting it down just to time and his capacity to be able to run both that brand as well as the Sheffield Brewing Company. Yeah. So good luck to Nick there with his future endeavours.
Yep.
Also, there was the announcement from Hard Knot, from Dave at Hard Knot, basically saying pretty much the same thing, that he was winding up the business, and once they'd sold whatever stock they've got, that's it. There's no more Hard Knot beers. And then the final one coming from America being the somewhat surprise announcement that Green Flash, and including in with that the Alpine brand, have been wound up. They've they had a national expansion strategy, but basically their largest shareholder, Commercial Bank, has foreclosed on its loans due to outstanding debt and poor business, and so the businesses have now been sold to a risk management company.
I was surprised. I mean, that's definitely a very steep rise and a very big fall in a very short space of time. So Green Flash have been around for ages.
Yeah.
But then they expanded. They had plans to be able to ship to every state, didn't they? And then suddenly they opened their East Coast in Virginia, didn't they? I mean, that's tap room and brewery facility looked sparkling, didn't it?
Yes,
I mean, they spent a lot of money on that. But a couple of bits I read, because I was quite curious about it, because it was a 20 million loan, which in the great scheme of things isn't that much. And if they were defaulting on that means they're defaulting just on even just the interest payments, let alone the principal repayments. So it would appear that some of the comments I read was that before they'd expanded, they should have maxed out the markets they were already in. They expanded too quickly, borrowed too much, but also, and this was something I wasn't aware of, their West Coast IPA, which is obviously their flagship beer, apparently they tweaked the recipe recently. And that was quite a surprise actually that they'd done that. As you're doing all these other things as well, suddenly you're tweaking the recipe of your flagship beer. Would seem like almost like you're getting into a perfect storm. But I mean, we had Green Flash Session IPA recently, and we also had the Alpine Duet, and I have to admit they again are both very West Coast inspired beers, which I've really enjoyed. So
same here.
I'm rather hoping that the beers still survive, and the people who are employed by them have found something that will suit them either within the new company or elsewhere. Because it is a bit of a shame, but it's quite a well-known name to suddenly find themselves in such trouble.
Yeah, and it's come at a time, as you say, where all of a sudden actually you're seeing Green Flash and Alpine beers fresher than ever in the UK.
Yeah.
As well, because not only were those beers that we enjoyed, they were one of the beers that I picked up in the place in Bishop Stortford that still had reasonable date on them as well. So obviously they've just begun to sort out their international, I'm assuming, probably cold chain distribution as well.
Yeah.
Which you would think would actually enable them to expand.
Yeah, exactly. So it appears to be purely the business side of the beer that has gone wrong rather than the beer.
Yes, yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Without knowing all the details, who knows? But yeah, there seems to be a lot of it in one short space of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more thoughts on the beer before we get into the final few news points?
I could have done with slightly less of the earthiness that I'm getting from it. It's quite weird because I read that this one, the format is just keg and can, and whereas the Roadie is keg, can and cask.
Yeah.
For me, this feels like it would suit cask quite well, especially with that sort of earthiness and that body,
that
would
maltiness. Really work well on cask.
I'm feeling that this would probably work better on cask than the Roadie, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, it was very nice. But if I had to choose between the two IPAs, it would definitely be the Roadie.
Yeah, I'd go with that as well. I'd choose that over this.
I would take a 6-pack of
This is quite hard going.
Yeah. I've finished it, but that's because we've been talking with the news for ages. There's still more to come.
Right, let's get through these last few points then. So West Berkshire Brewery, who are, obviously we're quite good friends with the guys there. They've launched a quality cellaring scheme to help educate landlords and beer contemporaries in the importance of serving and keeping cask beer. So it's a new partnership with Day One Training. They'll offer the scheme to permanent stockists of their beers, which include Good Old Boy, Best Bitter and the Renegade keg range. One-day course that will include topics such as line cleaning, the workings of a cellar, glass care, dispense and product presentation. I mean, that's a good move, isn't it, for any brewer's take? It's
probably the stuff that was de rigor 25-30 years ago before the beer orders, to be honest.
Yeah. Fuller's have announced that they are including all 397 of their pubs as refill stations as part of the Refill campaign app that's now available. So this was started in Bristol by a company called City to Sea in 2015. It's a national tap water campaign that aims to make refilling water bottles as convenient as possible by introducing refill stations. So
is this all part of the whole get rid of plastic?
It is, yeah. And there's also a logo. So if you walk past, see the logo, you've got an empty bottle, you can go in and you can fill up with tap water. That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, from Fuller's, it's a bit of an easy win. It's good publicity, and it gets people into their pubs who may not have decided to pop in.
Yeah. And you never know, you might stop for a pint of something while you're in there. Carlsberg have said that they're to wake sleeping giant Tetley's with a rebrand and investment. So they're going to basically look at the brand, change what it looks like.
Could they just bring back the flavour and cask? Possibly. They've reflavoured it in the past. Let's bring back cask Tetley tasting as it once it did. That was one of my favourite cask beers.
That might be a good move, actually. I mean, they acquired the former Leeds based Tetley's in 1998 and then closed that facility in 2011 before contract brewing out to sites around the country. So they're looking to launch the 4.2% ABV beer fairly soon.
I'm not excited.
I'm not fussed either. I just thought I'd throw it in there because it sounded like a good idea at the time. And then the last point of the news, which people will be glad that we've finally got to the end of it, is the Victoria Inn, where we recorded the last show in the pub, are holding a keg beer festival.
Yeah, so this is their first keg beer festival. They're doing it in conjunction with the local bottle shop in Colchester as well, Two Brews. And it's going to be over the first bank holiday weekend, much to my annoyance because I'm actually away for the whole of the bank holiday weekend. So I do feel that they've done it on purpose. Richard, I'm looking at you here. But yeah, if you are in the Colchester area, the Essex area, and you have a bit of spare time, it'd be worth popping in because I'm sure they'll have some great beers. And if nothing else, you better have a little bit of a look at the pub and get a feel for the place where we've recorded a couple of shows as well.
Always worth a visit.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm free, which is a shame as well. But I do wish them all the very best of it because I have become a massive fan of that place. But also I'm a regular customer at Two Brews as well.
Yes, you are. Probably more than me.
Probably more so, yeah. Yeah, so I do hope it goes well for them. And breathe. That's the end of the news.
I think we've earned a beer.
I think we have. I'm guessing tomorrow there'll be something massive announced.
Probably. Of course it will. Why wouldn't it happen when we've stopped recording?
Exactly.
I mean, the Molson Coors would have been after we recorded normally because we're recording on a Wednesday, which is a very unusual day for us.
That is very true. Yes. So yeah, we might have just missed that one. So, but no, I mean, there's a lot gone on in the last few weeks, and there's a few things that we've maybe had some comment on, and there's a couple of other things that we're going to go a bit deeper into in future shows.
But if anyone's got anything they want to add to any of the news items we mentioned, please do so.
Absolutely.
We always want to hear what other people have got to say.
Yes. So, what's the next beer that you've just poured us here?
Okay, well, obviously we've had a few of the lighter offerings, the Pilsner, the Session IPA, and their IPA. This is their Nightliner Coffee Porter.
Ooh, excited.
Yes.
2 words that I love hearing together.
And it's got coffee porter on the nose. That works.
That works very well. Now, probably unfairly, I'm almost going to always compare any coffee porter to Common Grounds.
I don't think that's unfair. I think you'll always compare something to something you either like a lot, or if there's something which you've got a baseline for something really bad. I think you're always going to go for an extreme, and Common Grounds, I think, for the percentage it sits at, flavour-wise, is pretty unparalleled where it is.
Absolutely, agree.
Especially in its drinkability as well.
Yeah.
The initial flavours and aroma from this one, maybe not quite Common Grounds, but it's not far off.
It's got coffee.
That's
it's
there.
Smooth and silky coffee as well.
And that slightly dry bitterness as well.
Yeah, and it's got the bitterness that you want from the porter.
Yeah.
It's marrying quite well.
Yeah, and I'm quite liking the fact not too much of the roastiness.
No, it's very balanced, very smooth on the finish. Right, so we've not recorded for 4 weeks, which means we've got 4 weeks worth of polls.
Oh, why did we do that? Why did we put 4 polls out?
Well, because we didn't necessarily have to go into them all, but we did say when we switched to a fortnightly schedule that we'd try and revisit.
Of course, and also, we always appreciate the fact that people are still contributing even when we're not recording straight away as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was the first one we put out? It feels like ages ago now.
Well, let's rewind, and we're not necessarily going to do these in order as well, because I've done these. I've kind of looked at them in order of what we're going to get most discussion out of as part of this now. So let's look at the first of the polls that we're going to cover.
Hopinions, 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 Hopinions.
Which was the most recent one, actually, which was something we've had a discussion about a while back, and was initially prompted by the lack of untapped recognition for this sort of thing. So we were asking about things like Untapped when it gives a St Patrick's Day badge.
Yeah.
We're saying, well, surely there should be a badge for St George, and consequently also St David and St Andrew as well, because we've got 4 patron saints in the UK. And actually that prompted Gammon Baron to ask the question, should breweries and pubs push St George's Day like they do St Patrick's Day? So we had 258 votes for this one. The yes vote getting 45% and the no vote getting 55%. So before we get into any of the comments, where do you stand on this one?
I think they should. And I think one of the comments will echo this bit. I think what the UK beer scene and UK pub scene is obviously lacking is a Guinness. Because the reason why pubs around the world are willing to support St Patrick's Day is because they get a whole load of branded stuff given to them by Guinness. For all I know, they might get the Guinness cheaper for that period of time as well. They get lots of support. They don't really have to do much. They just have to put a bit of green up.
Yeah.
You know, I was in a pub on the Holloway Road because we wanted to end up in a particular pub to watch the football, because all my family watches football, and it doesn't strike you immediately as an Irish pub, but there was plenty of green, plenty of Guinness available, and they were doing some food as well. So I think, yes, I think they should. I was annoyed with, and Beer Bods once, when they actually had the Beer Bods beer came out on the Thursday, and it was the 23rd, and I went back to them and said, why are we doing a Scottish beer?
That was last year, wasn't it?
No, it was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we hadn't noticed. Sorry, rubbish.
You should notice.
And you could have marketed that as well. And I think, yes, you don't. While it would be good to have a Guinness behind it, there's no to stop pubs doing it. Although what surprised me with the poll was the amount of people who commented saying, because of the negative connotations of celebrating St George's Day. Now, I've got Irish parents, but I'm English. I see no problem in celebrating St George's Day as an Englishman and not having any racist overtones or undertones.
Yeah.
Or being bigoted.
And I'm going to just comment on that, because there were a lot of comments like that, and we have always taken the view with the podcast that we don't have any political overtones or any sort of like anything where we'll sit on the right or the wrong side of what's considered correct. So we're not covering off any of those comments, because and essentially largely ignored a lot of those. The only comments that we did get, therefore, that we can really talk about, all echo what you said there. Essentially, what you said in your opening is that we don't have a Guinness to turn the day, because you could question, well, is St Patrick's Day still St Patrick's Day, or is it St Guinness's Day?
It's, for a lot of people, it's St Guinness's Day. Let's be honest. In some places, I was in the parcel yard the year before last, and I don't know how it came about, but we were having breakfast. It was towards lunchtime, and they gave us free Guinness. I'm really not sure how that happened, but obviously I didn't question it, because there was 5 of us getting a pint of Guinness each.
Yeah,
so I decided not to question that, because that's probably about £20 worth of Guinness in the parcel yard, at least. So, I love celebrating St Patrick's Day. That is because I go to pubs along the Holloway Road, which my mum and dad used to frequent when they were younger. I wish we could do more with St George's Day. I know it's on a Monday this year, but if St Patrick's Day was on a Monday, it would be celebrated.
It would, and let's be honest, it's also, we normally record on a Monday. Unfortunately, our recording schedule doesn't fall on St George's Day, and be assured, if it had have done, we would have been doing English beers.
Yeah, it would have been English beers. We'd already spoken about it.
Day. But let's just taking the few comments that we got on this one. So Neil Fletcher at Nearlyos31 said, which breweries that we champion have the clout to compete with Guinness, though? For this reason, St George's Day is nothing more than, say, Tuesday to most people. Fair point?
Yeah.
Bombardier, They did something. They tried, didn't they?
And they were actually basically giving away free Bombardier, and this was quite some time ago. And I remember me and Clayton were in a pub near work, and I think we OD'd on it. And I'm fairly certain I haven't revisited Bombardier since.
I'm not surprised. Well, that lends itself to JT at Al and underscore metal says, a lot of pubs do, albeit with promos on Green King or Hobgoblin, etc. Would be good if a brewer put a twist on it and made a beer with new UK hops for it.
Yeah, or, I mean, you still could get UK, like some of our local breweries, like I said, I mentioned Billericay earlier. If they brought out a beer that was not just a rebranded beer, but something that was new, they decided to do just for St George's Day, I think we could do more with it, even though you haven't got a Guinness.
Yeah.
And maybe that would turn the tide against what people don't like about St George's Day. It became a bit more fun.
Yes, absolutely. So that was one of the polls that we did. So thanks to the people that got involved in that. Next up we had, and again this was, and I do like it when this happens. These are suggestions from listeners that are saying, how about doing a poll on this, or how about asking this question. So this was from at Hoops and Hops, who asked the question, and I think this was on the back of when I posted a picture of a very out-of-date Stone IPA that I picked up in Tesco's. Are supermarkets letting things slip in relation to how they look after beer? 297 votes, 76% of people said yes, 24% said no, and there are a hell of a lot of comments on this. So let's get into some of these and then we'll get on to our views.
Okay.
As well. So first up from Pete at Hoops and Hops, and I'm sure these people, I do love to tag them in when we ask their questions so they can get an appreciation of how mad a Sunday night can be when you're tagged into a question that's being asked on Twitter. Pete said it's a yes from me. Interested to see whether I'm just timing my visits poorly or whether others are seeing the short dates that I am. I must admit, I do always look at cans that you know are going to have a date on to make sure.
I do now.
These days.
I do now. Now it's become a bit of a habit. I don't know whether it's a good one or a bad one, but I do it with most produce when I buy it from the supermarket. Anyway, I don't. If I'm buying something for the fridge, which is meat, I try not to buy something which expires the next day.
Yeah,
so it's a bit of a habit.
You want to get a bit of life out of it, don't you?
I don't think it's down to timing the visits poorly, if I'm being honest.
Well, there's also some points in here about stock rotation, which I'm sure we'll get on to in good time. But it's interesting because you do see that you know your beer's stocked up, and I'm always one of the things I actually do is check the ones at the front and the ones at the back to see if they're the same date as well, to see if the fresher ones have been put at the back, because
they should be,
because they'll last longer.
Yeah, but they should be.
Yeah.
If you're doing any sort of stock rotation, you should always be filling up from the back.
Yeah. Let's have a look at some of these other comments. So James at Gammon Baron said, when you see some of the macro shite they do put in fridges, which won't suffer any loss in flavour, not being in them. So that's a good point.
It's a good point, but people expect to see that macro shite chilled.
Because they're conditioned to think
people
so.
are conditioned to see those particular beers out of a fridge. They are never going to touch that beer warm.
Yeah.
They've been programmed. We've been conditioned over 20, 30 years, but that's going to be fizzy, yellow, cold.
Unless it's in Sainsbury's, because apparently they don't need to keep their beer cold.
Couldn't help yourself, could you?
I wasn't going to, but I just had to give Gary his moment of fame on the podcast as well. So Bristolian Stout at Bristolian Stout said yes and no. I think it's always been bad, but we are just more aware of how beer should be cared for.
That's probably a good point. I mean, when the first off licence Mum and Dad had, which I grew above, all our beers were in a cellar, and that cellar was I never remember that cellar being warm. Having had to go down there and earn my keep. I never remember it being warm, but yeah, I'd imagine that Bristolian Stout is probably fairly much on the mark there. We just think about it a bit more now.
Yep. Chuck Davey, or Charles Davey at Chuck Davey says, guarantee most people have some top quality beer at home sitting on shelves in a worse state than in a supermarket that they bought in a quality shop who kept the beer in a good state, and I bet they love the beer once it's opened.
Yeah, but then it's my choice.
That's true. Yeah. It's your choice. Once you've bought it, it's your choice how you keep it, isn't it?
I can buy eggs, I can put them on the side, put them in the cupboard, put them in the fridge. I can get my bread, I can put it in the fridge or keep it out. My fruit, I can do what I want with it.
Yeah.
But I'm choosing to. So he's bang on, but I don't mind having my own choice.
It's an interesting point you raise there in terms of eggs. Where do you keep them?
I keep them in the fridge, but I take them out an hour before I cook them.
I don't. So.
But it's partly because it's just an easy place to store them as well.
Okay, coming next week on Hopinions.
Egg o'clock show.
Eggs. So Matthew Lawrenson at See the Lizards, not much point in stocking them if the staff knows sod all about them. Just another SKU to most. I wrote this on Wednesday about the problems craft has in supermarkets from an informed worker's point of view. So
what does SKU stand for?
I think it's a product code. It's something to do with the product code.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm going to post a link to this blog in the show notes because Matthew does go on to say that he does work for a very well-known supermarket, that he's not allowed to say who they are, but if you read the blog, and you know about the range that they stock, you'll work out which supermarket
Okay.
it is. And he does work in the beer section. So it's quite an interesting read.
Okay,
So,
cool.
so give that one a read on that one. Friend of the show, I'm not going to say listener because he told us at the weekend that he doesn't actually listen.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the artwork, I'm not sure we call him friend of the show anymore.
Yeah, at Clayfish.
I can say what I like about him now.
Yeah, because he doesn't listen. Says, but not knowing about a product doesn't mean that you can't treat it right. For instance, keep frozen food frozen, don't put heavy things on squishy stuff. If there's a guideline produced for handling beer, it shouldn't be a problem, just takes input from head office.
Valid point, and that was fairly much in response to See the Lizard's tweet. That was part of the same thread, wasn't it?
Yeah. Unless that is your head office is Sainsbury's that are issuing things telling you that
Two mentions.
beer doesn't need to be refrigerated.
2 minutes, I can't believe we've done that.
Yeah, sorry.
Allegedly.
Sorry.
I'm putting in allegedly.
It's interesting because I think this is a good point to mention this actually. That again, news today that Beavertown are now going to be stocking their beers in Waitrose.
Yes. So they're going to have core range of 6 in the end. Did they say?
3.
I thought they said there was 3 more to come. Didn't they say that was only half of the range? Because someone said about the dark beers. So dark beers.
They're launching with Neck Oil, Gamma Roy, and
Gamma Roy.
Gamma Roy.
Who's Gamma Roy?
It's a new beer.
It's a new one for Waitrose.
Yes. Ray wasn't posh enough for Waitrose. How many beers we had?
Too many for this show, obviously.
Yeah, okay. So Gamma Ray and
Luke Lloyd.
Luke Lloyd. So they're.
But they did say that they said that was only half the range. I think it's really 6.
Well, when you look at Beavertown's core range, that is missing 8 Ball.
Yeah. No, not 8 Ball.
8
8 Ball? You're getting carried away again.
No, it's called 8 Ball.
I thought that was Magic Rock beer.
The rye. What's their rye IPA called? I'm sure it's called 8 Ball.
I thought it was Magic Rock 8 Ball.
That's Magic 8 Ball.
Magic 8 Ball. Is that the same beer then?
No, because that's a black IPA.
I know theirs is a rye IPA.
I'm sure it's called 8 Ball.
Okay, but I think Black Betty's going to be one of them as well.
Black Betty, and then probably something like Holy Cowbell.
I was thinking Holy Cowbell.
Maybe.
The India Stout.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting, and that again divided Twitter.
Yes.
Because a lot of people were saying, well, you've screwed the independent shops because they are completely and utterly core beers that they will be stocking all the time.
Yeah, because this is the first time Beavertown have ventured into supermarket territory, isn't it? So it's an interesting one. Interesting again that Waitrose has been is the choice as well. So it's been a choice for a few breweries in the past.
Yeah.
I think that's where Thornbridge first went into as well.
It's where Wild Beer are.
Yeah, so there appears to be a lot of trust because they're also then talking about well, how fresh would the beers be, and they're saying it's going to be. It sounds like they're going to get minimal stock on a regular basis.
Yes.
Rather than we're going to deliver to their central depot once every 6 months. It's how it read to me when I was reading it on Twitter today. It'd be interesting how it goes. And they're very different looking beasts to most of the stuff that Waitrose sell, because Waitrose are very predominantly bottles, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And it was interesting to say about the look of them as well. Somebody challenged Beavertown about the look of them and the whole Portman group getting on their case, and Beavertown responded by saying, we're actually having very constructive discussions with the Portman group at the moment to stop that from happening. So it seems as though they've taken, maybe after the whole Tiny Rebel thing, maybe Beavertown have taken proactive steps to go to Portman and say, look, these are our beers. They feature skeletons and skulls and things like that. They're not aimed at children.
And they're going to be in the beer section.
And they're going to be in the beer section.
They're in the beer section, so, it's... I don't go to Waitrose that often anyway, but, it'd be interesting to see how people receive it once we've gone past it's 30th of April, I think, they actually hit the shelves.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting what people think after it's actually happened. This is just off the back of the news, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I don't think it's actually the shops a lot of the time. I know that a few people say it, but I think once they're out on the shelves in the shops, a lot of shops, depending where the beer aisle isn't always a very hot part of the shop necessarily. It's probably where they're stored before that bit.
Yes, and if they're out the back in a cold store...
Again, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if they're out the back with an air conditioning unit that's facing the wrong way because it's air conditioning the rest of the place, then yeah, who knows how they're kept at that point.
But again, it's interesting. A lot of people were saying, "Well, you've screwed the independents here." I'm not sure so much because Waitrose, there might be a lot of Waitroses in city centres, but certainly
not big Waitroses, because again, your nearest Waitrose is Ipswich.
Colchester.
Oh, sorry, Colchester. One in Colchester. Then there's one in Billericay. So that's two that you've got access to, but you have to drive to both of them.
And to get to both of those, I've got to go past places that would stock Gamma Ray.
Yes.
Or Beavertown beers. No, just go straight for Gamma Ray.
Yeah, or even Gamma Roy.
Or even Gamma Roy when they bring it. I am looking forward to trying
Gamma Roy. Yes.
So yeah, that was interesting. Last comment on the supermarkets poll then, and this was a number. Even with the new character limit, Mark Johnson couldn't get everything he wanted to say in one, 2, 3, 4 tweets. So, big breath. Here it comes. Right, so this is from Mark Johnson, for those who don't know, at Mark N. Johnson. Right, so a couple of years ago, every single bottle shop I used had 0 fridges, just beer on shelves, stood around in a non-temperature controlled environment, like in a supermarket. People didn't lose their shit like the whole drink fresh thing. This has become good advice turned into craft beer doctoring that is now hypnotising willing listeners. Yes, there are better ways to keep beer, but we have become obsessed in the past 18 months. Do we all have cold stores at home? I keep some of my beers in my shed, which has seen a 16-degree temp swing in the last 2 weeks alone. All the beers are tasting fine. Yes, even those half-acre ones that need to be kept under a breeding penguin or something. I only buy supermarket beers canned, bottled in the past 3 months, just as I only would in certain styles in any retailer, experts or not. After that, just accept it is a supermarket, not a place for expertise. I'm done.
That's very much a good point. I've got a beer cupboard. I don't have a special fridge for most of my beers. The ones which I want to keep cold, I generally try to keep them either in the right place in the cupboard or stick them in the shelf. So I think there's probably a good point. I think yes, there probably has become a bit of a doctrine, same doctrine as you have to drink the beer two weeks before it's actually brewed. That kind of doctrine.
Yeah.
So yeah, there probably is an element of that. But like I said, for me, the biggest point is that once it's in my control, it's my choice. I trust supermarkets with most of their consumables because there's more chance that they're going to get in trouble for those consumables doing something to you. I reckon it'd probably be really hard to prove that a dodgy beer give you the jip or something like that.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you on that. Actually, it's not, is it? It's just that there's maybe going to be a slight taste difference.
Yeah. So yes, we could become obsessed about it. Yes, some of us do. It's probably in the same realms as you've got to drink your beer ultra fresh. But like I said, for me, it's just a case of I probably am now buying less beer from supermarkets than I did when I got quite excited about them having it. I now buy beer from supermarkets more in case of need.
More as a convenience.
In case of need or convenience. Yeah. So at the moment, I'm currently emptying my house of nearly everything, and that includes beers because I'm moving in with Michelle. So every now and again I'm popping over to the co-op when I am at mine just to pick up, say, a Ghost Ship or an Oakham or something. And we'll check the dates on them. But I haven't got a massive stock going on. So yeah, I use it because the co-op is 2 minutes over the road instead of getting a delivery to the house.
It's convenience, isn't it?
Yeah, and same for train beers.
Yeah.
Where do I get train beers from? I get them from the M&S.
From the station.
So because it's convenient. But that's about all I'm using them for now. I definitely use them a lot less.
Mm-hmm. Final thoughts on the Nightliner then?
Really enjoying that sort of dark chocolate feel to it, that bitter chocolate. The coffee sort of has fallen away for me a bit. It's become more chocolatey the more I've drunk it. For me,
we're still getting a little bit of coffee on the finish.
I'm still getting it, but it's
more like a smooth coffee,
less prevalent, I think.
Yeah,
very drinkable. Again, I would love to know what this is like. Even from the keg, I think it'd be really nice. And this has been done with expert London coffee roasters, Curved Brick Co. So that seems to be definitely the new wave of coffee type beers. They definitely are getting involved hands.
They're getting roasters
coffee
involved,
roasters,
aren't they? People that know coffee.
Yeah, it's the same as like
involved,
Roland and Steve. It has been, they've done collaborations. They're collaborating again with Weirdbeard for the Uppers and Downers, aren't they?
They are, yes, yeah, absolutely. So 2 polls in, 2 to go.
Yes. We're getting there, everyone.
We are getting there, and this next poll might tie in quite nicely with the next beer that we're going to do as well. So I'll ask the question, and then we can pour the beer and see where we go. So this one was, I think this is the first one we did when we went on our break. When you see DIPA, what's your current expectation? Juice bomb or bitter as fuck? So
is that what the AF meant?
Yes.
I'm so innocent, I didn't know.
We got 469 votes. So I've got to say, we do have a bank of what we consider to be throwaway polls.
Yes.
That we can do when we don't want to do them as a feature to a show or anything like that. And just to keep the engagement going on a Sunday night. This was one of our throwaways. It got the most votes that we've had for a while.
Yeah.
on
By quite some distance, actually.
And a hell of a lot of comments as well. So 73% of people went for Juice Bomb, 27% of people for Bitter as Fuck. Like I said, 469 votes, and then a lot of really, really interesting comments, which basically broke it down between the expectation versus reality, and actually this is what we really want is this, when what we're actually getting is this. So before we get into it, we've just opened our next beer, which is from the Signature Brew kind of specials range that they're putting out.
Yeah, so this is a slightly bigger can, isn't it? Different branding. It's just how would you describe the branding? It's almost very black, isn't it? And then with some sort of pattern on it. It's almost like a light show.
Yeah, it's kind of circles on it, isn't it?
Yeah.
With different things, and comes with the unique foil lid as well.
Yeah, which basically does starts to make you think even more about a record, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like a
old-fashioned
record.
vinyl.
And it's quite nice because it covers that top and keeps any dirt off the top. So if
Yeah.
you are going to guzzle this out of a can,
That will have done its job, hopefully.
yeah.
So this is their Treble, as it's called. So it's a triple IPA, 9.4%.
Brilliant.
Let's leave it there for now.
Let's. I want to try this because I've been looking forward to trying this one for a long time.
Quite a sweet sort of caramel on the nose.
Sweet caramel, almost picking up a little hint of spices or something on that as well.
That wasn't what I was expecting.
Ooh, piney, resinous.
But I'm still
Feel to
getting
it.
a lot of sweetness.
Yeah, it's not got a big bit of finish.
No, it's very sweet.
Not by a long way.
This one came out, I think, probably around about the time we recorded the last show, wasn't it?
Yes, it did. So it's been out for a few weeks.
So it's been out for about a month or so.
It's not old though, is it?
No, I'm talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a fairly recent release, but I didn't get the chance to try it until now.
No, this is my first try of it as well. So while we're enjoying this, let's get into some of these comments then, because this was one that obviously really interested me and my personal views around beer and how it's presented and promoted and all the rest of it right now. So first up, Miles Lambert said, Juice Bomb, there is often bitterness, but my bitter disappointment at the missing IBUs.
Just to make sure he's still number one fan for Steve, that sentence alone.
He just ticked off every box in that sentence. Bod at Tribod said something very similar. I just drank a triple IPA with 30 IBUs. Yes, you didn't misread this. I didn't miss out of one. Needless to say, I had to mix it with a kick-ass Impy Stout, but that's not the point.
And that's in block capital.
That's all in capital. So he's shouting that last bit. Charles Davey at Chuck Davey. I need to get on board with being excited about DIPA. I currently see DIPA and get instantly bored and offended by the price. It still doesn't feel relevant to my idea of beer and what I'd order in a pub. Hope this changes and someone can excite me.
That's an interesting comment.
Yeah.
That was quite a standalone comment as well from Chuck.
It was, yeah. In what, like I said, there were a lot of comments to this as well, and a lot of comments were either in that kind of just need something more from them, and there were a lot of comments that were like they're very pricey.
Well, I think this is what I noticed as a trend with our polls is that the question, if people sort of vote yes, so they're in the positives a lot of the time. We get less comments from that group.
Yes.
We get less comments, but the people who say no feel more compelled to make a comment. And although we had some Juice Bomb supporter comments, a lot of the comments, like I said, Charles's one is a bit of a standalone comment, but a lot of the other ones were the ones who tended to want the bitter as fuck type of beer.
Absolutely. So let's take a few more of those particular views then. So Flying Welshman at Bix_Barton_SW6. The appearance of a fruit smoothie crossed with the aroma of a week-old pine air freshener and my wallet crying. Some still deliver the goods, but some are just ticking boxes.
I couldn't tell which side of the fence he was on with that comment.
No, I think he was going for more the... I'd like to know which way he voted.
Yeah, because I can't tell from the comment.
No, I don't think he's a fan of them, of maybe the juicy dippers. Drinking Craft at Hoppy Tweets. I wish it would be made clear what kind of dipper it is. Yes, fucking please. I want that as well. Don't just tell me it's a dipper. I want to know if it's juicy. I want to know what the IBUs are, and I definitely want to know if it's a new North England, a New England style beer.
You're just trying to help out Capital of Craft there.
Because those are the three things I just don't want in beer right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be handy if dipper. For me, dipper in my head still, although I know what we're saying by the question about your expectation now, but in my head, a dipper is a bitter as fuck. Yeah. That's my starting point.
That's where I want to go.
It's resinous. It's West Coast. It's Axe Edge amped up.
That's what I want it to be, but I actually now think that the actual realisation of it is that's not what it is. If you see dipper, what you're going to get is you're going to get something juicy, something low IBUs, and something that looks like fruit juice. That's what I think a dipper is now. I think it's changed. Yeah, my expectation of what it is different.
Yeah, okay. So what you hope versus your expectation are two completely different things.
Which is summed up perfectly. And I said this at the time. This was, you're not going to get a better tweet than this next one on this particular subject. So this was from Hop Addiction at Hop Addiction. Expectation being smashed in the face with a Molnir hop hammer wielded by hop god Thop. Reality tickled by Elmo. Which
I did love that.
I just think it's perfect.
Yeah,
you can almost go no further.
Tapped into our geek world at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. And there were not worded quite so well as that. But that's where a lot of the comments fell on this poll was that your expectation when you see dipper or double IPA is that you're going to get something that's hoppy, it's bitter, and it is going to tear some of the layers of the skin off of your face. But the reality is what you're getting now is you're getting juicy low IBU beers.
Yeah, but we should counter that by saying there were some comments. But about the juicier the better. I'll take a dipper from the likes of Adunt, Cloudwater, Wylam, still do Jakehead IPA, which is nowhere near a juice bomb. It's just a proper straight down the line West Coast IPA for me. Etc. Over saying that tastes like a Christmas tree every time, and that's from David Markham at DW Markham. Also Simon Clark at Simon Carbon echoed the same sentiments. And
there were a lot of similar.
There were a lot of similar sentiments. I mean,
that,
obviously from our completely non-biased point of view, we've definitely put more of we want the dipper to be nice and bitter. Objective journalism here on the podcast for you. But yeah, I mean, my hope.
But that's our preference as well, though.
My hope always is but this is a hope for where I have it: an IPA, a dipper, or a triple IPA. I'm always hoping for the starting point to be roughly the same.
Yeah.
I just expect things to be ramped up, but not. I'm again less adverse to the New England IPA style than yourself, but I'm not a massive lover of it because I just don't need that big mouthfeel all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything for me. And I think for us, we hopefully this year will get the ideal opportunity to do that kind of stepping stone, because I'm excited to hear finally the first rumourings of this year's Unhuman Cannonball heading our way.
It's a bit later, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, coming in May this year rather than in April, as I think it's always been. And I think we will very much be penciling in a Cannonball Run show on live on air, probably just not restricted to the one of each beer.
Oh dear, carnage!
I tell you, I will certainly not be sharing any of it.
No, so it's one of those shows.
Oh yeah, it's going to be cans each. So yeah, I mean that was quite an interesting one. Like I say, for what we thought would be a bit of a throwaway, there was actually quite a lot of engagement.
Yeah, I was quite surprised at the number of votes in that one.
Yeah,
and then, well, I know we're on a triple IPA, but what are your thoughts at the moment of this one?
I want more bitterness for a triple IPA.
Yeah, I want less of that. I mean, I'm only guessing because I'm nowhere near an expert, but I'm guessing like caramel's been involved in this beer somewhere along the line. I know that it says that the hops are Bramling Cross, and they can be a bit sweet at times, can't they?
No, not in this one. No.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking different beer. My fault.
No,
what does it say? No, I didn't see the right on the side.
Hops on the side of the can on this one. So we've got Mosaic, Summer, Chinook, Citra, and Simcoe.
Summer, I don't recognise.
No, I don't recognise that as a hop. Doesn't say the IBUs on it either.
I think for me, it's still that. I'm still just getting to the caramel or caramel has sort of eased off, but it's still there for me, and I'm really struggling to get past it.
It is just a little bit. It's a little bit sweet. That's the only thing for me. I mean, I'm going to say it. It certainly doesn't drink its 9.4%.
No. It doesn't drink 9.4%. I just wish I still had a bit more of that bitterness and the piney resinous.
Yeah. What I just sprung to mind. What this is for me is a young barley wine. If you was to leave that can and let it age and let the hops begin to die off, I think you'd begin to get the makings of. It's got very similar flavours and characteristics to some of the Fuller's vintages. Yeah. I think that would go full on barley wine over time.
I think you've got a good point, actually, and it's quite a good way to liken it, actually.
Yeah, it's tough though, because again, it's one of those things that for me, I'm always going to measure a triple IPA against Unhuman Cannonball, because that's really the only reference point I've got in terms of triple IPAs.
Yeah, and for me that's even less than you, because you've done every iteration. I haven't. It's just that in my head I have again, going back to the last question, I have a certain expectation. That expectation is less sweetness, more of that hop floral character coming forward, but also I want to be hit with that bitterness.
Yeah,
that bitterness and sharpness.
That's what's missing for me. I wanted a bitter hit at the end of this. I didn't want the sweet hit.
No,
because the sweet hit makes you want to guzzle it. Basically, what I want is a bitterness to make me sit back and savour it for a bit before I go back in for another bitter hit.
Yeah. So but I do know that a lot of people are talking favourably about this beer after it came out.
Oh, it's certainly had good reviews. Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to try it on keg. I think that time has maybe already passed us by, but
yeah, probably we'll probably miss that boat.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see if this becomes kind of an annual release that they do.
And like most things, there's usually a tweak in the process at some point as well.
Yeah, because again, using Unhuman Cannibal as a reference point, the only reason you get that as a annual release is because they want to produce it when their hops are at their best. So that's why you only get it once a year.
Yeah. It's also nice that, despite me being called out on this, Signature Brew called these tall boys as well. Rob.
I don't think there's any real definition over tall boys. I think a lot of people have referred to anything bigger than 330ml as a tall boy, haven't they?
I certainly did, but
yeah.
I was wrong apparently.
Right, last poll then. One again quite personal to you and I.
Yep.
With beer festival season well underway, what's your thoughts on children at beer festivals? 406 votes. Yes, 33%. No, 67%. So a big swing in the favour of the no here. Now, obviously, both you and I have children that you've openly said before, you've taken Michael to a lot of beer festivals.
Many a beer festival.
I've just started with mine. I've just started taking them to beer festivals because at the end of the day, it's the only way I'm going to get to experience some of these things. Sometimes when I've got the boys for a weekend is. A lot of the beer festivals happen to fall on the weekends when I've got the boys. So I kind of there's a slight selfish streak in me in terms of, well, why should I miss out just because I've got
I know we're going to get into the comments, but yeah, I've got quite a lot to say in this, so I'll try and distill it. My opinion is that I will go to the pub with my son. I'm quite happy to be in a pub when there's other children. It's the same thing as anything. As a parent, I take responsibility for my child. I take responsibility for the choice I make about where my child is, much the same as the responsibility I take for letting him watch TV programmes, movies, the games he plays on the PlayStation. I'm taking responsibility for that as well. I don't expect anyone else to look after my child. And I think that's where lots of the problems come in, is that there are parents who take their children to public events, not just beer festivals, any public event, and assume that everyone loves their little darling. The same as all dog owners assume that everyone loves their dog. It's not true. Some people do, some people don't. But your pet, your child, whatever it might be, is your responsibility. And you make a choice. You should be making an informed choice about when and where to go with your child. And that's what I always felt I've done. I haven't taken Michael to a beer festival at night time. I've gone to ones which run into the night, but we get to a certain point and I'm thinking, it's no longer suitable.
Yeah.
Why would I want to stay there with him? It's no longer in an environment that works for him at the age he was then, or even the age he is now. In a couple of years' time, when I'm not necessarily looking after him, we're just going, it'll be fine. You make a choice based on that. And, that's what we do as parents. We take that personal responsibility. And I've never really had a problem with other people's children in any venue I've been in for any event, provided I'm not expected to look after the child.
Well, let's go back and look at the cask event at the weekend. You took Michael and I took my eldest George, who's only 12, and I was apprehensive about doing so because the last time I took them to a beer festival, I took them to Top City. Maybe not the best call on my part that I took them to that festival because it's a completely different. Sorry,
I'm going to correct you. You took them to Top City as their first beer festival.
Yes, not the last one. Sorry, yes.
You took them to Harwich, which would have probably been better as their first one.
Yes, yeah. And I was apprehensive about it, but actually, come Sunday, George actually said to me, "I really enjoyed myself yesterday. It was good fun," and that was nice to hear from him, as well, that he had actually enjoyed himself. And let's be honest, he sat in a corner on his phone most of the day, as did Michael.
Yep. So I mean, basically, the introduction of Apple iPhones and other devices are available. Has been a massive assistance in taking children to beer festivals anyway. But the one bar I've taken Michael to the most is in Chapel in Essex at the East Anglia Railway Museum, which has a Saturday. The Saturday's the family day, lots of outdoor space, but also they have old railway carriages dotted around, and you can even sit in some of them while you're having your beers. So it's always felt more than just a beer festival, and that was for the first 4 or 5 years I took Michael to beer festivals. That was probably the one, but I took him to solely because it was a nice introduction.
Yeah. I understand why you do that. Yeah,
it's a very family-friendly atmosphere. Would I have chosen to take Michael to Hop City? No, I probably wouldn't have. But again, it's your personal choice, and we're all allowed to make that. But I assume that for the time you were there, you had your eye on both the boys, and they were probably both on their phones, and you were making sure that they weren't causing any issues.
I've got to say, I didn't enjoy the experience because it was just me with them. The other 2 festivals I've been to, I've been with you and Michael. Yeah. So actually, I've been with a crowd of people, and there's, even though they don't talk, there's been other young people. It still
feels easier, doesn't it? Yeah, I get that. Most of the time when I've gone to Chapel, there's been other people there. My mum and dad used to come down sometimes. Carl, listener of the show and friend, he's been along, him and his missus. So there's always been other people. It definitely makes it easier because even just that very practical moment when us as adults have been consuming a lot of liquid, need to go to the loo.
Absolutely, yeah.
There is that moment when you have to have I've got to go to the loo. So yeah, there's other people around who are part of your group. It does make life easier, just from a practical point of view.
Yeah. Now, again, this is one where if we dig into it, I think we got a lot more comments probably from parents that had voted yes, where a lot of the people that voted no had just voted no and didn't justify their reason. And it may very well have been a no because I don't want kids in my space while I'm enjoying a beer. So we'll dig into some of these and see what came out. So again, a lot of similar comments, but one of the ones that came up a lot, and this was first one to mention it, was Andrew Hamilton at O Beer Network and also Si at Leeds Beer Wolf, was during the day yes, in the evening no, which I think you commented on when you were saying there. We then had Emmanuel's at Emmanuel's and Sheffield Hopcast at Sheffield Hopcast say that they've got small children and it's the only way they can enjoy a couple of casual beers at local festivals. Plus, as someone involved in the brewing industry, I want to engage with my friends in the industry. However, after a certain time of day, I need to have a good session without them present.
Very practical.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't need the additional responsibility. Paul at UNRCD and Beer Monologue at Beer Monologue said, liked what the landlord from the Vic said on the last podcast. If kids, dogs and adults are well behaved, then there isn't a problem.
Yeah, it's a valid point. Adults can be just as well as misbehaved as kids can be.
Absolutely, yeah. Ball P at Ball P33. Beer isn't for children. If you want to spend time with your kids, a beer festival probably isn't the best place to do it.
Yeah, completely disagree.
So do I, because we're not making the children drink the beer, are we?
No. And I would say it's better than hiding them away from it. They hit 18 when they can go and legally get pissed on their own without any sort of supervision whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'd rather they get exposed to what can usually be, especially for the kind of festivals I go to, where during the day it's fairly responsible attitude to drinking beer and drinking alcohol in general, that they get to see it. I think it's better than you have no access to alcohol in your lives whatsoever for 18 years.
Yeah.
However, when you're 18, go on, knock yourself out. Literally.
I agree, and also as people that are quite involved in the beer world, and certainly from my point of view, you know, my boys are aware that I do the podcast and therefore there's a lot of things that go around that. I want them to understand what it's about. I want them to grow up in that environment of understanding that actually there are times when this drink is a means to an end, but there are other times where actually it's a social conduit or almost, in terms of you'll go out with friends and you'll drink many of these over the course of a day, and you might actually not end up drunk because you've just been having a great time with your friends.
Exactly. So yeah, I would disagree with that one.
Yeah. Rach at Look at Brew says this all feeds into the larger debate of bringing up kids around alcohol. I think this is what I've just said, which I'm happy to do. It teaches responsibility from an early age, assuming the parents are responsible, of course. Beer should be inclusive, and that includes family-friendly events and locations.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Again, I might be coming from a slightly biased point of view because I grew up above an off licence, so alcohol was present in my life. You know, it wasn't. It could never be a taboo subject when, for 12 or 13 years, downstairs above, you know, we lived above it, was 2 floors worth of alcohol. It could never be a taboo subject around us.
Because it's there, isn't it?
It's there all the time.
Yeah. Again, the next one, a few people said this, and Michael McCall at Lebowski49 and Men Behaving Badly at MBB Podcast. Good point. I have 2 completely contradictory points of view at any given time. Sometimes adult spaces are what I want, and other times I'm happy for more family-friendly spaces. I'd lean on being more inclusive, though. I think that should be more prevalent. And again, that inclusivity thing about beer festivals should be that. David Holden at Yes Our Blog. Early sessions, yes, as long as the layout works, i.e. stairs, walkways, changing facilities, etc. Betty comes to loads with me. Betty's his daughter. I think she's just turned 1, so she's quite a young one to be going to festivals. She loves the attention and things going on around her. Don't see evening sessions though as a sensible choice.
I'd agree with that. But again, that's your parental responsibility taking over and going, do you know what? This is not the right time to be in here now. And also, from a practical point of view, that's also can be quite a long day out. Every beer festival I've taken Michael to, I've always gone there for when it opens.
Yes.
So we do the daytime bit.
Which is what we did with cask as well, didn't we? We were there just as it opened.
But also, the practical point of view is like, you can feed them beforehand, because you can't guarantee, because kids can be fickle, what sort of foods may or may not be on offer. So I tend to go there when we've eaten, do a beer festival. Okay, if they happen to do something, bonus, or I bring stuff with me, or I plan something afterwards, and the beer festival's the bit slot within the middle. So yeah, but it's, again, you know, the two or three of those comments are basically your parental responsibility. You know, and with men behaving badly, we took responsibility for those three and took them to the pub.
We had to, didn't we? Yes.
Yes, you know, we had to look after them because they're barely old enough to drink those
After
guys.
feeding them the ridiculous ABV beers that we
the
did.
26% Brewdog.
Yeah. Final point on this one then.
Miles has decided to do a Mark Johnson.
Yes, from the number one fan at Miles Lambert, over about 4 tweets. So again, I've got to hold my breath on this one and try and get it in one. Okay, so lots to say on this issue. Firstly, there are a big variety in beer festivals, some better suited to being family events than others. For example, a small local cricket club beer festival near us is very family friendly. No concerns over taking the kids there. However, larger craft festivals are no good for kids. You have to ask why you're taking them. If it's just because you want to go and have no childcare, then it's definitely a no. Your kids will only resent you for it. Nothing wrong with sensible introduction to beer festivals with older kids, but again, it's up to the parent to know if the right environment for your kids to be in and for the right reasons. Also, I don't expect other adults to be allowed to act like dicks just because it's a beer festival. That feeling doesn't only kick in if my kids are there. I resent arsehole behaviour at all times anyway. #opinions.
And thank you for putting in the hashtag.
Yes.
So much easier to find the comments.
Absolutely.
No, I think again, you know, it's one comment, but it's, you know, so it's a big paragraph. But he's right. But it's still saying fairly much the thing is about you make your choices.
Yes.
It's like you book your holidays, you book your days out during the summer breaks based on what will work, not just for them, but what would work for you as a family, as a group, whatever it might be. Will everyone by the end of the day still be, you know, happy with each other, talking to each other? You make those choices, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
But I was quite pleased we got around because we were never sure when to do that one, were we?
No, we weren't. But it seemed the right time, as we said in the question, that beer festival season seems to be underway now, and also we were both taking ours to the Cask Festival as well. So. Maybe not. Okay, so
that's the polls done.
That's 4 weeks worth of polls.
So thanks everyone, and especially thanks to people who hadn't necessarily contributed before.
Yeah, a lot of new people contributing to those polls. So thanks to that. But as always with these things, if you do want to still have a comment on them, just have a comment. Use the hashtag opinions, and we'll find it. We'll keep that discussion going.
Exactly. So. We've opened another beer sleeve, last of the care package.
Yes, and this is interesting because as we record this, we've already featured this beer on a show that you've not heard yet.
So is this like Blue Peter, one we prepared before?
It kind of is because we're about to tuck into Signature Brew's Anthology, which is a big imperial stout that they've done, but this also features on next week, the next show, not next week's,
in a couple of weeks' time,
the next show that you're going to hear, which is our next opinions on film, which is Avengers Assemble.
Yeah, which we even talk about the film occasionally.
We talk about beer occasionally. We largely go full on nerd for 2 and
hours. This I think this was the final beer on that as well, wasn't it?
It was indeed. So this is kind of a preview review.
Yeah. So if you want to be geeky, it's a prequel.
It is a prequel, but it's a sequel prequel because we also had this at the weekend.
Yes. So this was the beer which we were going to talk about. We had this on cask, and
it
was the best beer I had. The cask offerings we had.
Stunning.
You know, this is what is this? 10%?
Yeah.
There or thereabouts. 10% impy stout, and we had it on cask at the weekend. And I think we had it as our last beer at Partisan before we went to Affinity to do the next section of beers. It was nowhere near that 10% on cask.
No, it was so easy to drink.
Yeah.
So cheers. Let's tuck into this.
Yep.
That's really good.
That is superb.
that is... And there's sorts of roasted notes going on in there.
Yeah, this is the first of their special series, isn't it?
It was.
Special guests.
This was released
it.
a while back.
Yeah.
This was.
And we've had it.
I think it was back in November.
Yeah, we've had it 3 times in a short space of time, actually.
Yeah.
So a 10% ABV Imperial style, part of the batch being preserved in Shiraz oak until the end of 2018. So there's another iteration of this coming out.
Oh, cannot wait for that.
So I suppose if they actually decided to, they could actually release it at Cask 2019.
They could. So Shiraz is a red, so this is currently sitting in red wine barrels.
Yes.
Oh my.
So you could end up with a red wine barrel-aged canned Imperial Stout.
Wow.
That's not bad going.
That's not bad going.
We live in good times.
While we enjoy this, let's take some more listener comments.
Let us know, write it down. Let us know, write it down. Let us know your thoughts and bitter and lingerness. Write it down.
So first up from Kevin McLean at KJ02MCL. I'm late to the party on this one. Final's Jarl has to be up there in any discussion on session beers. Consistently good, probably a favourite all time, never just mind session beer.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned it at all, did we?
No, shockingly so.
Shockingly so, because we're both big fans of it.
Yes.
Both bottle and cask. I don't think I've ever had it on keg.
I don't think I have.
Cask, because it turns up fairly frequently at the Craft Beer Co, doesn't it?
And it's also seems to be a bit of a regular at the big camera beer festivals as well.
Yeah, but I think it's a superb session beer. So yes, it's a great shout out. And apologies for our omission, actually.
Yes, we should add that one to the list. From Gregor J at Gregor_J_. On the subject of sessionable dark beer, you tried the Colonel Brewery single hop dry stout range. Seriously big beers for 4.5%. Another to look out for is Buxton Brewery Redneck Stout. Some serious alchemy going on there.
Now, I've had the Colonel Brewery single hop dry stouts. Some of them, obviously, like with all Colonel beers, they changed them as often as the wind blows. I'm not sure I've had the Redneck Stout.
I have. I've had it up at the tap room in Buxton, and it's a solid stout. I think again it comes in at about 4.5%. Not too thick, quite thin body wise, but really easy to drink. So again, I just love this that people are still getting involved in old episodes.
Yeah, because that was the sessionable one.
Yeah,
which we did. That was some time ago now.
Yeah, absolutely. So another one, Neil Hayden at Neil Hayden 73. Just listened to the pub episode, which was the last one that we did. With the added bonus of my first mention on the podcast at the end. Well, Neil,
second mention.
You've just got your second. Congratulations.
I'm glad you enjoyed that one, because I have to admit I really enjoyed recording that.
Yes, I did.
And again, partly because it felt just like a chat.
It was just a chat. We just chatted for a while, with the guys. Yeah,
a long while.
Yes, a long while. Not as long as this one, though. That has to be said. John Rogers at JM Rogers 2000 just popped into Tesco to buy wine and beers for tonight's England match. Had to advise them that all wine and beer on the top shelf was very warm due to a large industrial heaters blowing directly onto bottles. So didn't buy any very warm craft beer or red wine. So very much linking into the discussion that we've just had.
Didn't say what he did buy in the end.
No. Probably some cold Fosters or Carling from the fridge.
And some Chardonnay.
Yes, absolutely. And then finally, it wouldn't be a show without Paul's question of the week.
Questions fill my head.
So this is from Paul at UNRCD. I'm buying more beers direct from breweries, but get annoyed by the P&P costs and some of the choices of courier. Should P&P be incorporated into the price or be free over a certain amount? And does the choice of courier affect your decision to use them? Go.
Firstly, Paul, pleasure to meet you at the Cask Festival.
Yes, I will echo that. I know I've met Paul for a quick beer before, but it was nice to spend a good amount of time.
Yeah, it was nice to spend a good amount of time. He was a lovely bloke. And I think he was very pleased that we persuaded him not to watch the 0-0 draw between Everton and Liverpool.
Yes.
Which, you always know it's a bad game when it's the 8th match out of 8 on Match of the Day. But back to his question, yes. P&P I don't think should be free necessarily. I like it if it is. But there is a cost to shipping stuff. Does Choice of career affect your decision to use them? Yep. And I'll call them out. Anyone who uses Yodel, once I know they use Yodel, I don't use them again. Simple as that. And that's not just with beer. There's other services and other products that I bought from other retailers. Once I know it's Yodel, I've already paid my money. I have to suffer that delivery.
Yeah.
I won't order from them again now. So, yes, there are some I don't like. I also think that some breweries could actually package their own beers better themselves. And again, there are a couple of breweries I will no longer buy beers from direct because their packaging is shite. Because I can't be asked for the hassle of going back and getting replacements. Why should I? I just want it to turn up in good order.
And just because it's in a can doesn't mean it's safer than in a bottle.
Because the
cans can still get damaged.
Cans are thinner than they used to be as well.
Yeah.
Because we're all trying to be environmentally friendly. We're trying to use the minimum amount of glass, the minimum amount of aluminium. Rightly so. Package it. You know, you get your beers from Beer Central. I think I heard someone say that they think it would withstand a nuclear blast. The packaging,
without a doubt, honestly, the way that Beer Central package their beers is brilliant. So you get your box, turn up. It's wrapped in the most industrial type of duct tape. It takes a knife to get through your initial box. You open it, there's a second box inside that's been padded with thick plastic all around it. So when you eventually manage to get that box out as well, what you've then got in there is you've got kind of egg cartons supporting everything around the side, and then every beer is wrapped individually in bubble wrap. There is no way any of those beers are breaking unless the couriers decided that they are going to play football with that box.
Okay, that's the most excessive bit of packaging I was saying, but congratulations to Beer Central for doing it.
But I think it's excessive because they're a small independent bottle shop, and they know if a bottle breaks or a bottle or can is damaged and breaks on the way to you, they've got to replace that out of their profit.
I get that, and I don't understand why you wouldn't package it correctly. I did beer boards for 4 years. Every 3 months, case turned up, raw mail, parcelfuls. Never had a problem. It's doable.
It is absolutely doable, yeah.
And
if you use the right courier.
Yeah, if you use the right courier and you do the right packaging, you should always end up with no issues. So just don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
But I've got no problem with paying a fair price of P&P. But don't get me wrong, if someone says it's free, I'm not going to say, oh sorry, can I give you some money for it? No one does that. But I've got no problem with a fair price of P&P.
No, I haven't, but P&P is always the kicker, isn't it? Because you've made your order, and then you get to checkout and I've forgotten to put P&P on.
Yes.
And then,
it's a bit like if you go to like one of these places which are essentially for trade, like a Costco or somewhere.
Yeah.
All these prices are great. 20% VAT to be added on.
Yeah, you forget that, don't
bugger.
you?
But you know that happens. But yeah, I've got no problem with P&P being added as long as it's a fair price and everything turns up the way it should turn up.
Yeah, and that's essentially the P&P thing is the reason why we hold discount codes for places as well on our website.
Makes the P&P free.
Is to try and take the hit of the P&P off. So we know that we're not taking from profits of those independent retailers that gives us discounts. What we're doing is trying to just take a bit off of that price of P&P.
Yeah, and again, if I get to the end and it suddenly comes up for, say, sometimes because some places do something over 50 quid is free. It feels like, oh, okay, that bottle of beer is free.
Yeah,
that's how I work it in my head. So yeah, again, a good question from Paul. Keep them coming. I don't even know why I'm saying that to you, Paul, because you will anyway. But yeah, I'm definitely the thing that says P&P fair, but there are certain couriers which you can go and do one.
Yes, absolutely, and I'm with you on Yodel as well. I'm not a fan of that particular courier company. Yeah. So yeah,
is that it?
I think we are there actually. Just want to say again that keep getting involved in what we do. Use the hashtag opinions. Ask us questions. Feed into the shows that we do and get involved in the polls. Yeah, that's how we manage to keep this going.
This show works and it's evolved over the almost 2 years now we've been doing it together because we get the engagement. Absolutely.
So, before we wrap up, the beer. Final thoughts on this one?
Still loving this beer.
It is really incredible.
Yeah.
It's again, it's one of those beers that you do at the end of a series of beers, which we've done tonight.
But it hasn't got that... massive thick mouthfeel. But it's not
enough.
thick. But it's not thick, is it?
It's perfectly balanced. I mean, this is a great impy stout, and I'm actually gutted that I haven't got a can of this sort of aging away in the cellar, because I think this will develop a little bit more over time.
Yeah, I do, but I'm quite, now that I've actually read about the Shiraz oak, I'll be keeping an eye out for
that. I will. And if you want to listen to us drinking this beer again after about 8 beers before it, at the end of a film,
and there's a good chance we'll say less about it than we just did now.
Absolutely. Listen to the next show that we've got coming out, which is, as we've mentioned, our next podcast is going to be our next Opinions on Films released, which is Avengers Assemble, and that is dropping the night before Avengers Infinity War releases, and that's no mistake.
No, and we are very excited about it, and Steve and his boys and me and Michael are booked.
We are booked, and we will probably talk about that at some point on a future podcast.
I don't think we'll be able to help it.
No, we're not going to be able to help it. So that's the next show you got from us, and then we've got loads more stuff coming after that.
Yeah, we've got lots of plans actually.
We have.
I'm excited about this.
It should be fun. So mate, it's been fun recording again tonight. I've enjoyed drinking these beers with you.
Thanks again for Signature Brew for sending them.
Yeah, let's retire and finish our Imperial Stout. When the crowd say ball.